minutes after 10 is the time. When do you spend the money that you earn? In your head, I mean, not necessarily in the tills, in the shops, or even online. You're sort of thinking to yourself, well, hang on, next week I'm going to earn X, right? Which means that I can buy Y, doesn't it? Or so I've got my rent covered, I have a little bit left over, I might be able to afford that thing, or we can maybe go out to the cinema, go out for dinner. I mean, you don't really need to be particularly clairvoyant to suggest that most of us have had, for most of our working lives, a relationship between income and outgoing that is largely defined by foreknowledge of what your income would be. Yeah? It just is, right? And so, you read stories today about a clampdown on 0 hours contracts, and they are almost all written from the perspective of the people who've benefited from them, i.e. the employers. The figure that they've arrived at, and I think it's like the upper limit of what the reforms being announced would cost, is £3 billion. You don't need me to tell you. The Daily Mail will stick £3 billion in the headline, and you'll have to read almost halfway down the article before you learn that what they've actually said is the direct cost to employers of the reforms as a whole could be between 350 million and 2.9 billion per year. So, they could have put 350 million in the headline, but they didn't. They put 3 billion in the headline. So immediately you go for the most frightening figure. You go for the most jarring statistic. You don't necessarily tell the truth. And they're not alone. The Daily Telegraph also goes with the 3 billion figure. And they're allowed to, because it is the absolute upper limit, slightly above the outside upper limit of what these reforms may cost. Angela Rayner's crackdown on 0 hours contracts is how it is going to be described. And I sometimes wonder whether or not we don't notice the big stuff. Do you know what I mean? Whether we kind of just, the old boiling frog analogy, that you just turn the heat up so slowly. It's not true, apparently. Thermodynamics means that and various other things, the frog will actually jump out of the boil. But still, it's an analogy for a reason, a famous analogy for a reason. You turn the heat up so slowly that the frog doesn't notice it's cooking until it's no longer alive, effectively. And sometimes I wonder whether we're all a bit like that, whether the slow introduction of things, the creep, if you like, of change means that we don't notice it anywhere near as acutely if it was introduced overnight. And obviously, in legislative terms, 0 hours contracts are introduced overnight. You went from not being able to have them to being able to have them. But the way that they've insinuated themselves into our society has always struck me as horrible. I got a message yesterday suggesting I was becoming too mellow in my old age and that my opinions used to be much more pungent and powerful. And I thought, you're probably right. I mean, you can't, it's exhausting being angry about everything. But I do feel very strongly about this for a whole heap of reasons. The question is going to be, what was it like? 0345 6060 973. What is it like to actually be on a 0 hours contract? Because a lot of the coverage has always been caveated with positives. Oh no, it really suits me, actually. It's really worked out well for me. Flexibility. And that's obviously true for some people, but we're discussing, if you like, the utilitarian whole, the whole thing, the whole big thing that 0 hours contracts represent. I got a couple of things occur to me. The first is that I was sitting in a noodle bar. I think I told you this at the time about 5 years ago. It was a chain, so I won't tell you which one. And I'm not 100% certain what was going on, but I'm pretty sure that this was what happened. I was sitting in a noodle bar, slurping my noodles, and the manageress came into the kitchen. It was one of those noodle bars where you're sitting at a counter and the chefs are on the other side of the counter. And the manageress came into the kitchen and told one of them to go home. She just said, we're not very busy, you can go home. And I remember two things. I remember being quite surprised by that, and I remember his face, which was a sort of curious mixture of resignation and disappointment. And that's why I opened this programme by asking you, when you spend the money that you're earning, when you spend the money that you're earning. Because if they tell you at 2 o'clock That's it now. What's that, probably 4 hours, maybe more, of earnings that you were expecting to receive that day, and you're not going to receive them. You're not going to receive them. And when you think about it, you look at the impact of this on people and wonder how on earth it was ever allowed to happen. How on earth was it ever allowed to happen? And part of the answer, of course, is headlines saying 0 hours clampdown to cost firms £3 billion. And we're supposed to go, oh, those poor firms. Those poor firms. And part of me does. Hospitality in particular at the moment is really, really struggling. But the idea that you keep the boss in business by letting them essentially tell the staff on the day whether they're going to earn any money or not has always struck me as extraordinary. No? And then the second one, oddly, was a cartoon strip. I think it was in Viz by the brilliant Lee Healy and his collaborator, whose name temporarily eludes me. And it was just a half-page thing. I've told you about this before. It was a half-page. Barney Farmer was the other. I think Lee does the pictures and Barney does the text. And it was a really bleak, black and white, half-page cartoon strip in Viz. And it just involved a bloke getting on the train in the morning, which is going to cost him money, to go to work at a warehouse, to be told to sit tight for a while. I don't know if there's going to be any work for you yet. So I don't know how commonplace this experience is, but Barney Farmer and Lee Healy's work it's social commentary. It's incredibly powerful. Sit tight for a while and we'll let you know whether or not there's any work at all for you today. And there isn't. So he goes home again. And it's a bit like that Streets track, isn't it? It's by leaving the house today, I've done nought. He's actually come out of the day worse off by leaving the house than he would have done if he just stayed at home all day. But I'm obviously a very middle-class cliche in many ways. I'm not exposed to this. When my children have worked, they have enjoyed getting their timetables at the weekend. You know, if they're working in a pub, for example, which they've done, they get told on the Friday night what their shifts are going to be next week, and that is great for them. It suits them down to the ground. If they were a little bit older, if they had more financial responsibilities, it wouldn't be perfect, would it? Because they'd want to know every day, I want 8 hours work, but it suits them. It would not suit them to get a phone call in the morning or a phone call at night to say, yeah, you can come in tomorrow or you can't. But if that was the only work they could get, they would have no choice but to say yes. They would have no choice but to accept it. The other point, of course, which is why I'm outraged by this phenomenon, but I'm not stupid, I hope. And I can see that it would have, you can also say no. That's perhaps the point of it that gets missed by undergraduate activists like me. It's possible to say no. So I can't really, if I say no, I'm not coming to work tomorrow, I don't get paid, it's all bad. And I mean, you'd be keening and gnashing your teeth, because what are you going to do without your daily dose of JOB? It doesn't bear thinking about, does it? But I could imagine my life being such that because of responsibilities or health issues or things like that, you ring me on Friday, you ring me on Monday night, say, can you come in tomorrow? We've got some shifts, we've got some hours for you tomorrow. And I say, oh no, I can't. I've got to take mum to hospital, or I've got to be in for the gas man. Do you see what I mean? I can see where the flexibility argument comes from, but I think I want today to paint a picture with quite broad brush strokes. I don't think that stopping bosses from doing it is going to well, I don't know, actually, whether or not it is going to eradicate the possibility of having a more flexible relationship with your employer if it suits you both. And, of course, if it is simply a case of telling the employer that you can't do this anymore, then with a caveat, with a little loophole of voluntary employment, they could pretend it was voluntary while effectively telling you that you've got to like it or lump it. And if you don't like it, you can go and get a job somewhere else. I don't want to do a lengthy introduction on this one. I don't really want to go round the houses. I just want you to tell me whether or not 0 hours contracts are as evil as they appear. 0345 6060 973. Because don't forget what the headline would look like. in a different era, in a different age, in the newspapers that are owned by the people who don't really believe in workers' rights or don't really think that you or I should have much recourse to the law. They don't like trades unions. They don't really like health and safety legislation. You know all this because they tell us. 0 hours clampdown to cost firms £3 billion. A ban on child labour to cost chimney sweepers a fortune. Do you see what I mean? I mean, all of these things that we have won over the years have not been won with ease. You know, they would still be sending children up chimneys and making them work in mills if there hadn't been great pressure brought to bear upon them. If politicians of the left had not defended the rights of the workers. I guess I'm asking you whether or not we should be putting or should have put 0 hours contracts on the list of appalling abuses that employers have inflicted on employees over the ages. Just because we're alive now doesn't mean that terrible things don't happen. You sort of think back to the master sweeps and the mill owners and you sort of thought, oh, thank goodness that couldn't happen. Of course it could still happen. Just because we're alive now doesn't mean that the tension that Karl Marx described doesn't exist, the tension between the owning classes and the working classes. But I don't really have personal experience of this, and I don't really, despite that warning yesterday that I'm becoming too mellow in my old age, I don't want to get all my ducks in a row on how awful this is. I've already used the word evil until I've got a little bit more personal input, until I've got a little bit more insight into what it is actually like. So, you have been on a 0 hours contract. What was it like? 0345 6060 973. And if you haven't, join me in thinking, in pontificating, in opining. And of course, I want employers as well to tell me that it's not unfair. It suits everybody down to the ground. I'm open to that possibility. It just seems to me to stink. And if, like me, you don't have any particular personal experience of this, just tell me whether or not it pushes your political buttons in the way that it pushes mine. And that's what I mean by the frog boiling. You get less angry with each passing year. So imagine you introduce 0 hours contracts in, 2010, and you were really angry about it, but it didn't really affect you. You just thought it was disgusting, but your kids are going to be fine. And then by 2011, it's kind of dropped off the radar a bit. 2013, you've almost forgotten. 2015, it's all. 2016, it's Brexit. 2020, 2024, 2026, who still cares about? And that's why I like politicians like Angela Rayner, because if there is a massive injustice here, if it is as grim and as exploitative as it appears to be, then it shouldn't have a time limit on it, should it? It shouldn't have a winding down period. It should be just as disgusting today as it was when it was first introduced, which is how we would feel, for example, about child labour or about the removal of safety equipment from building sites or the removal of the working time directive. Anything that has been hard won by the trades union movement and the Labour Party to protect workers who spend their entire lives being told by owners that the Labour Party are their enemy. Anything that has been hard won by the Labour movement is temporary. They'll take it away again in a heartbeat. And this is one of the things that they have got away with for the longest time. So why do you welcome its abolition, its imminent abolition? 10:17 is the time. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 19 minutes after 10. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I think, I read out a message yesterday. I get quite a few saying, you what was it? You just don't get it. You just don't get it. And there's lots of things I don't get. Of course there are, and this is one of them. I've got no personal knowledge of what it would be like to not know until tonight whether or not I've got any work tomorrow. Or even perhaps not know until tomorrow morning or tomorrow lunchtime whether I've got any work tomorrow night, tomorrow evening. And there were periods in my life where that might have suited me down to the ground. But if that's the only working arrangement I can secure, it seems to me to be pretty close to gross, right? So what's it like? Yeah, no holiday pay, no sick pay, no set income, no way of budgeting, no planning forward, no certainty. It seems to me to be terrifying, and yet it's been allowed to seep into our society almost unchecked. Susan is in Leeds. Susan, what would you like to say?
Yes. Hi.
Hello.
I find 0-hour contracts really terrible at the moment. Like, what I've been doing is I'm employed by an agency that I have to go to schools, and I'm supposed to be a teacher, but I'm not a teacher. I'm not qualified.
Right.
So they can. I have a lanyard that says teacher when I go in, but they choose me because I cost less.
Yeah.
And I'm called sort of in the morning, anytime, usually between 6:45 and 7:30, and I just have to leave, which means I have to get up really early, get ready, and wait on this phone call.
So it's a real. Your day starts every day starts with a just in case. The call could come, and then so you can't plan anything. You can't arrange to do anything else on those days in case the phone rings at 7:15.
That's right, and I'm paranoid about the phone. I keep making sure it's on because I can't bear to miss the call in case I don't get the work. And then
you need the work. And would you want to be working every day if that was an option?
Yes.
So,
of course I would.
Well, you say, of course I would. I mean, people keep telling me the flexibility is important, and I think for some people it is, but you would much rather know every day that you're doing X hours work.
Yeah, I definitely would. There's been times when I have got the call, and often it's to a school that's round about 20 miles away. I have to prepare beforehand, make sure I've got petrol in the car, I've got everything ready, because they say you've got to be there in 45 minutes or whatever. And then if it hardly ever happens, but if I am like 5 minutes late or something, it gets docked out of my salary. It's just a horrible way to be,
You sound quite frazzled.
Yeah.
I don't know what you sound like the rest of the time, or I don't know what you sounded like 10 years ago or before you were... So, maybe you are just quite a frazzled-sounding person, Susan. I think I probably am as well. But it's no way to live. It means you're in a state of sort of perpetual alert.
Well, yes, you can't plan anything. You want to plan things. There might be a time when I want, like 4 days, a day off because I want to do something, but I can't really get there to do it because I can't allow myself not to be there.
This is what the Labour Party exists for. This is what the Labour Party exists for. I suppose the only downside is that if they are compelled to treat you better, then the job would no longer exist, but that seems impossible given the nature of the job that you're doing.
Yeah.
How many days a week do you normally work?
5 days.
So that you do normally get 5?
I don't No. What I want is 5 days. Sometimes I get 5 days. Most times I get 4 days. But like now, because it's the holiday, I'm not getting anything.
That's part of the reason why. And that's part of the reason why.
Yeah.
Of course it is. Again, if you want to make this a left-wing, right-wing thing, remember how angry right-wingers get about the fact that teachers get paid in the holidays. There it is. A world in which people working in a school, although not as a qualified teacher in Susan's case, don't. So the 0 hours contract has been a gift, a great boon to the people who don't want teachers to be paid in the school holidays. Happily, the qualified ones still are. Susan, thank you. 23 after 10 is the time. It is, of course, being reported that industry chiefs warn the reforms will also backfire by making it more complicated and expensive to hire staff. It's funny, isn't it? When the boot's on the other foot, the response is, so what? The response is, well, if you don't like it, you can do something else. But if it is the employers, it reminds me a little bit of the private education coverage, where, poverty doesn't exist in this country. There is absolutely no such thing as poverty. But it's absolutely outrageous that some people are now being asked to pay VAT on the school fees for their children. Absolutely outrageous. Do they not understand how hard these people work? Do they not, that the struggle is real? So somebody literally runs out of money before they've run out a month. They get to the 27th, they're not getting paid to the 1st. They don't know what they're going to do. They certainly won't be able to go out and buy anything at all. They have no cash left. 0 is 0. 0 means 0. Not real, not true, not at all. Everywhere in the right-wing media, you'll see poverty denial or simple difficulty. Can't be true. Well, everyone's got a phone these days. Of course they can afford a new toothbrush. But then the boot is on the other foot. And wealthy people complaining about having to pay VAT on school fees for their children, people like me, except I never complained. Oh, my Lord, get the violins. This is absolutely outrageous. Cry me a river. And it's a bit similar here. There's someone who can't plan anything because she doesn't know from day to day whether she's going to be working tomorrow. Or even today, if the phone call is coming at 7:30, But please, won't we think of the bosses? Industry chiefs, no less, have warned that the reforms will also backfire by making it more complicated and expensive to hire staff. Maybe you're not a very good industry chief if you can't actually guarantee your workforce work. And you're asking them to take the risk. It's the socialising of the risk and the concentration of the profits. So they get to keep all the profits and you get to take the risk of there not being enough work for you to earn your wage that day. Didn't used to be like that. Shouldn't be like that now. Chris is in Oxford. Chris, what do you reckon?
James, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Well, it's interesting what tempts people out of their self-imposed purdah, isn't it? This
I was just
you.
listening and I was just in shock, actually.
That's the spirit. Go on.
I run an event staffing agency in Oxford,
yes.
And we have staff on 0 hours.
Yes.
But I just wanted to try and give it from the other perspective. We schedule work 2 weeks out, and then the zero contract staff have the capability to then decide which particular shift that they want to take.
Yes.
And I suppose it's the flexibility and then knowing their earning potential based on what they sign up for. I think we're slightly different from, say, like, I don't know, maybe one of these warehouse situations where people are sent home on a day, but we would never do that. That once they're committed to the job.
But you see, that to me is not. I know it is technically a 0 hours contract, but everybody knows 2 weeks ahead what work they're going to be doing 2 weeks hence.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's fine. I mean, that is. I mean, I presume a lot of your staff are students.
We have a range of age groups. There's students, there's semi-retired people.
So people like that flexibility.
Absolutely.
And you're not. And I mean, it's not a my way or the highway scenario. I mean, and that qualifies as a 0 hours contract. So you wouldn't necessarily want to throw that particular baby out with the bathwater. But there will be people in your sector who will be phoning people up and saying, "Sorry, we don't actually need you tomorrow after all." And there'll also be people in your sector who count their heads at an event and send people home. We can't pay you.
I mean, I wouldn't say 100% that it's always perfect.
No.
We do have certain situations where, something's happened, not enough guests have turned up to the certain event, and I think people are asked. But we have within our contracts that once people commit to a certain amount of hours, they're paid for those hours regardless if they're sent home or not.
Yes, I mean, and you can see why that is problematic in a way, but it is the risk being taken by the person who keeps the profit, whereas at the moment the risk is being taken by the person on the relatively low wage. You're obviously one of the good guys, but the system as it stands leaves far too much space for the bad guys to operate. Because there it is. You know, just think about that. We're not going to make enough money today, so I'm sending you home. What normally happens, what's happened for most of our adult lives? If the company is not making enough money, who takes the hit? Who takes the hit if the profits are down on that event or on that week? You don't take the hit if you're on the front line. You don't take the hit if Morrison's sells less food next week than it did last week. You're not going to take the hit on that. It's going to be the shareholders. So what are 0 hours contracts designed to do? They are designed to shift the risk from the people who keep the profits to the people who do the work. And there is wriggle room here. Clearly, Chris proves that there is nuance. There are circumstances in which the flexibility is a good thing. But the bottom line is they are socialising the risk. They are passing the risk of no income to the workforce while keeping... They don't share out the profits when they have an absolute blockbuster of a day. They don't share out the profits when they make more money than they were expecting to, but if they look like making less money than they were hoping to, they send you home. It is just disgusting, right? With the constant caveat that Chris is okay. It's coming up to 10:30. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. It's a personal experience one, this, because your personal experience might prove that my pungent opinion is wrong, but I don't quite see how you're going to be able to justify the worst excesses of 0 hour contracts by reminding me that some bosses are decent and using it in a better way. It's coming up to 10:30. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Dominic Ellis has your headline.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's the relationship between risk and reward. I'm sure there's a pithy figure of speech, excusez-moi. I'm sure there's a pithy figure of speech, isn't there? something. I've got this phrase stuck in my head, socialising the risk. What would it be? Keeping the rewards and socialising the risk? I mean, think about the instrument that a 0 hours contract is. And it is literally a way in which you get to, if you're the boss, you get to keep everything when things are going well. And when things are going less well, the cost is borne by the lowest paid members of staff, not by you. So you are keeping the rewards and socialising the risk. I think that's extraordinary. And yes, okay, it suits some people, particularly if you don't want to commit to 40 hours a week, or you quite like to have a little bit of flexibility because sometimes you like to take Tuesdays off, or you might like to take Wednesday afternoons off so you can listen to PMQs, but then of course they're in recess at the moment, so you're a vet. So yes, of course, we've all been at places in our life where we quite enjoyed being able to pick and choose the hours that we were going to work, and we were lucky enough to have an employer that was going to do it. But my goodness me, when you look at the explosion in these modes of employment since 2010, you have to conclude that most people are not having a positive experience. So what is your experience? 0345 606 0973. Joe's in Birmingham. Joe, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I worked for a 0 hours company for 7 years. When I first started working there, it suited me because I was a carer for my father, and if he was ill, I could sort of say, right, I can't come in on this day and this day or whatever,
exactly.
Which was fine. But I left about 2 years ago, and the year before I left was awful. The company was a private company that facilitated family time for children in care with their parents.
Okay.
And we used to supervise the sessions. And we were expected to go into work, and if the parent or the child didn't turn up, we'd still be expected to be there, but we wouldn't get paid for it.
Wow.
And also, when I left,
this is the private sector in the public space, isn't it? So this is like the privatisation of care, of children's care.
It was awful.
That's unbelievable. I wonder how many. I just want to make sure everybody took that on board, because you won't believe this, Joe, but sometimes people listen to this programme and they don't pay full attention. So you would be told, we need you in at 10 o'clock. You'd get in at 10 o'clock. The parents hadn't turned up to visit their child in care, which meant that you didn't get paid because you weren't going to be supervising their visit. But the money that you would have been paid is probably still going to the private company.
Yeah, they would still charge social services for it, yeah. Yeah, it's very frustrating.
Isn't it?
Yeah, very.
That is what. So privatising the profits, socialising the risks. And usually that means that the public sector is getting stuck with the bill while the private sector is keeping the profits. But in this occasion, it's literally you. You are the one that is... paying the price of this scheme. What are you doing now? Have you got a better arrangement now?
I do the same thing, but for a local authority, and it's so much better. We've got a set contract, and full-time hours. It's brilliant. I had to leave because my personal circumstances changed.
Of course.
And there was no way I could rely on getting the money I needed to live. It's just so bad.
You got to turn up for work and not get paid.
Yeah.
I wonder how commonplace that. What time is it? 10:36. I've got another 10 minutes to see if that, because I've got a horrible feeling that you will be far from alone. And you've also highlighted the point I was making at the very outset about this being a deeply, deeply political issue, because you have public services that are publicly run, or you have the same services privatised, and the priorities change immediately. Why would a company want to have a contract to provide supervision for visits to children in care by parents, if not to make as much money as they possibly can? So if they can legally get away with telling you, oh, look, Mum hasn't turned up, Joe. Sorry, mate, we're not paying you today. If they can legally get away with it, then they will.
Yeah. What used to upset us as well is we were obviously minimum wage as well.
Yes.
And if the parents had to pay private to go and see their children, there was some private parents, they were charged £90 for an hour.
Yeah.
And to think what they would be charging social services, that sort of money, it was just awful.
There is a scandal waiting to explode in the whole area of children's care, not just in the sphere that you described, but in the homes as well, the children's homes. Some of them are actually illegal. There's a journalist called Martin Barrow who does incredible work in this field, but doesn't get anything like the attention that he should get, Joe. Thank you. Because, of course, these children are also being used as pawns. The privatisation of profit and the socialising of the losses. don't turn up for a meeting, the private company still gets paid. The ordinary worker does not. I find that breathtaking, don't you? And it's commonplace in the care sector, of course. My niece is 19, and they told her she couldn't go on holiday despite supposedly being on a 0 hours contract. They would add and remove hours as they liked. She might get a call in the morning, and then a call 4 hours later, and then another one in the evening telling her whether or not they wanted her, just as they saw fit. There was no pay for travel between calls. She's now left, and we wonder why social care is in crisis, says Helen in Devon. So sorry, the 3 calls that you get, the gaps in between them, you're not getting paid for. So we've got some paid work for you between 10 and 11, between 2:30 and 3, and then between 5:30 and 7. That's the paid work that we've got for you today. What are you supposed to do with your life, and how are you supposed to survive? Oscar's in Farnborough. Oscar, what would you like to say?
Oh, hi, James.
Hello, mate.
I just wanted to actually pick up on that comment of, if you don't like it, go find something else.
Yes, I'm not saying that, mate. You know that it's not my argument, but it's a common argument in this kind of conversation.
Yes. And, some industries, you can't do that. I worked in live events industry as just a crew member, and that's the only option available to you. It's 0 hours or nothing.
Yes.
All these companies do it. And actually, I found, because of the nature of live events and the off-season, when you're not in the summer and things like that, there's no work. And so what you have to do is you have to grind out your hours in the summer. So you're doing 50, 60-hour weeks to make sure you're covered for the off-season. And as well as that, I think just the way you're generally treated in these companies is less than if you were a salaried employee.
I suppose in a way that even if you had some sort of contract for the season, it's not as if you'd still be doing all the hours you could find, because you were not going to get paid off season, or they'd just recalibrate your contract like a teacher's, where you continue to get paid even though the off season is much longer than it is for most workers. It's more the uncertainty that's true, yeah. That saps the energy, and the inability to plan. That's the thing I would find it very hard to get my head around, is that you don't know, you can't sort of make plans because you can't guarantee what you're going to be earning or what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, exactly. And you'd be incentivized to sign the 40-hour opt-out agreement where you can work more than that in a week. And actually, one thing I find quite sort of subversive as well is they advertise the hourly rate, but actually when you go to sign a contract, they're adding on your holiday pay to the hourly rate, so it looks more attractive than it is.
Yeah. Listen, it's suboptimal what you're describing, but it's not the worst example that we've heard, and there will be some industries that wouldn't be able to survive without a recognition of seasonal work. I mean, it was ever thus when I was growing up in Worcestershire. The seasonal work, picking fruit, was a huge part of the rural economy, and of course, if you're getting paid to pick fruit all summer, you're not going to be doing much in January. And don't at me to say you might be picking turnips. There was a lot more picking fruit work in summer than there was in winter. So obviously there's a balance to be struck, but the idea of not knowing at 7 o'clock in the morning whether you're going to earn any money today, that just makes it impossible to do anything. It really does. 10:41 is the time. Oscar, take care. Tamara is in Telford. Tamara, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James.
Tamara in Telford, you're like the mythical, not mythical, you're real, but the Tory with legitimate concern. I mean this genuinely for people who don't know why I'm excited. I'm looking for people who are not racist or remotely uncomfortable about immigration in general, but who have got meaningful and substantive opinions about the problems in that part of the world. And up you popped, Tamara in Telford. I will never forget you. Why are you here today?
Right, I'm here today, James, to tell you, on one score you're absolutely wrong, and on another, but in the same conversation you're absolutely right.
Okay, that's 52-48 then. Yeah,
no, I was an employer in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes.
In a business that made 80% of its profit over 3 months, because we sold refrigeration and air conditioning products.
Oh, I bet you wish you'd stayed in that sector, don't you?
Yeah, I do today.
I bet you do. Carry on.
So, we used a high level at the time of agency staff.
Yes.
Now, legislation was brought in. This is where you're wrong. It wasn't brought in for the companies as such. At the time, in the late 90s, people were abused by agencies.
Yes.
They had no rights or anything. And employers were paying phenomenal amounts for irregular staff.
Got you.
And that's what the 0 hours contracts used the words when they were first introduced. They were first introduced for use with irregular hours, not regular. So I had a period from June, July, August, maybe September, where I needed people, but I did not need them October to May.
Yeah.
Yeah. And using agents, let's say at the time, minimum wage was £10, agencies were 20.
But there are two conversations unfolding here, and one of them isn't really the one that I'm having. The notion of seasonal work is very different from the notion of not knowing until 8 o'clock in the morning whether you've got any work at all today.
That was never intended on 0 hours contract.
But that's what's happening. You've just heard 3 people this hour tell us that's their life.
I agree, and this is the bit I'm going to say you're right.
Okay.
You said 0 hours contracts were intended for.
Oh, I see.
They weren't.
Okay.
They were intended for irregular hours and for people who wanted flexibility. The other area you're wrong is you do get holiday pay. You've always had holiday pay on 0 hours.
Well, some people don't.
Well, that's illegal.
Oh, so you'll be earning your credits, as it were, for all the work that you do. You'll get no, you're right. That's the point that Oscar was making about them when they advertise the wage. But again, that's thin. Hang on, that's thin gruel, because if you don't know how many hours you're going to do, you don't know how much holiday pay you're going to accrue over the course of a month or a year.
But then you shouldn't be on zero. You should. This is where legislation has to come in.
Yes.
If it is regular work, 0 hours contracts have been abused.
I agree.
And should not be used.
There we go.
And to me, it's easy to legislate.
You just ban the practice of clocking people off during quiet periods.
Yeah, and
also,
me,
while retaining them on site. That's the amazing bit. Retaining them on site so that they could be returned to paid work should the need arise.
Yeah, no, but it comes even before that point, James. Like your events person was saying. I used to have a conversation on a Thursday, and I used what was called, because I used to use students, but they're wholly unreliable, as were agencies. I did something out of the box, which you would expect from me, of course.
Absolutely.
I put an advert in Saga, and I called them my Grey Brigade.
You got retired people to come and work for you.
People who retired at 55, so they were predominantly forces, police officers, public sector, and they used to say to me, Tam, she's got a bloody list for the summer.
And everybody's happy.
Can I come?
Everybody's happy about that. And I don't think that would be affected at all by the legislation that you're mooting, that you're calling for.
But we have to have legislation. Now, to me, once you've made an offer of hours and someone has accepted them, that's no different to contract law.
Completely agree.
But to me, this is a legislation issue now, not a 0 hours.
Yeah, but that's what. But I don't know if I've missold it. I'm still not entirely sure what I'm wrong about. But that's.
Well, you were wrong about that. They were introduced.
I wasn't asking you to explain. I was just putting it on the record. Yeah. I'm still not sure what I was wrong about. But anyway, this is a legislative issue. Angela Rayner is changing the law, which is why a lot of the right wing media is having a fit of the vapours this morning.
They shouldn't, because
I know they shouldn't.
Because companies are abusing it for what should be regular work. Nobody, I don't care which side of politics you are, how can you object to something that means these people will have to be given a proper contract? Because that was the intent. This is for irregular work, whether it's only for 4 or 5 hours a week every week, or whether it's for a month of work a year. To me, we've got to get this. The legislation is quite clear. If it's irregular work, a 0 hours contract.
So more power to Angela Rayner's elbow.
Yeah, and I never thought in my lifetime I would agree with Angela Rayner.
Well, there you go. You see, stick around long enough, and everything happens eventually. Until 2015, you'll know this tomorrow, but I didn't. Until 2015, or if I did, I'd forgotten. Employers in the UK could actually ban you from having an arrangement, a 0 hour contract with another employer. if they had one with you. So not only could they ring you up at 7 o'clock on Tuesday morning and say, sorry, mate, sorry, Keith, no work for you today, but they could also enforce a rule by which you weren't allowed to have an arrangement with anybody else. So you then couldn't ring up and say, oh, have you got any work to do? I mean, it's just extraordinary. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's the political pendulum, once again. The pendulum of politics. Some people still believe that the trades unions had far too much power and far too much leverage in the 1970s, and that's a strong argument in some of the cases, you know. Let's look at the history of the miners' strike in the 1980s. But the idea that it should all, therefore, be deposited with the owners, with the business owners, hang on, what did the newspapers call them? The industry chiefs should get to decide, is obscene, actually. Not just absurd, but obscene. And there it is, the best possible, the best imaginable example is, we made a ton of money last week, and you got paid a relatively small amount, let's say minimum wage. We're not going to make much next week, so you're not going to get paid anything. But we keep all the profits from last week. It's 10:49. Simon Marks is in the building. Quite a lot going on the other side of the Atlantic. We will do our level best to get across all of it after this. And then Mystery Hour at 12, of course. It is Thursday, isn't it, Keith? Just double-checking. Mystery Hour at 12. And Henry Riley was in Kidderminster this morning. I don't know if you heard it at the end of Nick Ferrari's show. He was a very, very charming report on a blind horse that's being taught to use Braille. And it just coincides with a story about bankers and lawyers and other professionals being encouraged or urged or even perhaps compelled to move out of London by 2031. This is part of Andy Burnham's devolution drive. And we've been a bit on this lately, haven't we? We even had some sound effects ready for Coronation Street voices to appear on the programme every time I said the word London. But it is really interesting. It's one of the first...
London!
Oh, flipping heck, Keith. It's one of the first easily identifiable elements of so-called Burnhamism, isn't it? A determination to move focus, or at least to dilute focus away from London.
London?
And see it arrive instead in other parts of the country. But we haven't discussed it on a personal level. I mean, what is it literally like for a person to make that move? Henry Riley messaging me yesterday to say how friendly everybody in Kidderminster is, because that is, if you've spent your whole life in the capital, that can come as something of a surprise. It's 10 to 11.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10:53 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where by popular demand Simon Marks is back. It's hard to know where to start today, Simon, but should we begin, do you think, with the USS Abraham Lincoln?
Well, I think the USS Abraham Lincoln is an astonishing story.
Yes, I do.
This is a Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier with 5,000 sailors aboard. And it has now, thanks to Donald Trump's war on Iran, broken the record for the longest consecutive number of days that any aircraft carrier has spent at sea without putting into port. We're up at over 250 days now. Normally, these things put into port every 30 or 45 days. And a standoff is developing. I mean, it's not quite mutiny on the Bounty, but it's got potential.
Yeah.
There were furious meetings over the last week between families of sailors aboard the Abraham Lincoln and top Pentagon officials. Months ago, we started learning from families that the troops were saying that the food was running out, the meals were getting increasingly tiny. I mean, literally, you know, the victuals and the grog are reaching a low point. And what we learned over the last few days is that family members say that multiple members of the crew on board this warship have had to be restrained from throwing themselves overboard because mental health is deteriorating at a very, very rapid clip.
This is actually chilling.
And bear in mind that Pete Hegseth, when the first allegations were made back in, I think, April, about dwindling rations, both on the Abraham Lincoln and the USS Tripoli insisted, no, we've got more than 30 days of supplies, as is required for the full complement on board, and we only the best for serving members of our military. And families of those troops aboard the Lincoln have made it very clear now to the Pentagon that something's got to give. They say that they're going to sail the USS Theodore Roosevelt into the region to relieve the Abraham Lincoln, but the USS Theodore Roosevelt, as of yesterday, when I checked the tracking system, is in San Diego. And that's about a 3-week sail from the region. So this situation is very serious, and it underscores that while Hegseth and Trump project invincibility about the US military and have publicly denied that the weapons stockpile is being depleted.
Well, and of course they've already won the war several times.
Even though the Strait of Hormuz is still closed, but we control
but they
it.
also control it as well.
But while all that's going on, the psychological and human toll among troops and their family members back at home is really becoming very grave.
Incredible story, and truly incredible. And as Ash, who has been helping us make sense of the Strait of Hormuz story since this madness began, has just reminded me that this is the military who are going to necessarily draw more attention than the merchant navy, but there'll be plenty of merchant seamen stuck. Well, we know there are thousands of merchant seamen also stuck in a kind of bizarre limbo as a consequence of the strait remaining.
There's one sailor aboard who did try to throw himself aboard. And was held back. Yeah. He's been placed in medical hold now ever since that happened, and his wife told the Stars and Stripes newspaper this week that her husband believes that once this is over, after 13 years in the serving military, he's going to be dishonourably discharged.
I read that.
I mean, it's devastating.
It is. And Donald Trump continues to just spout nonsense on the subject and claim things that are demonstrably untrue.
And not only on that subject.
Well, of course not, but that might perhaps explain why the woman who has until now been charged with trying to sanitise the madness and present it to the press as something that is sane has had enough.
Yes, I noticed that some wags on social media yesterday were wondering if Caroline Levitt had decided that she was going to leave the administration because 24 hours earlier she had learnt that she was flown back from Turkey on board the plane that President Donald Trump was not on, and therefore may have concluded that she was considered disposable by the President of the United States along with half of his government.
But not his former golf caddy.
Not his former golf caddy, the social media woman, the woman who does all of the
secret
Truth Social, and Pete Hegseth. They were the only ones that were on board the decoy plane.
Yeah.
But Caroline Levitt is departing the White House podium. And look, I mean, she has been an unbelievably effective communicator for him. I mean, one could say that Leni Riefenstahl was an unbelievably effective communicator. She has lied relentlessly from that podium on his behalf. But the most important thing that I think she's done is purge the White House briefing room, and particularly the White House pool, of a large number of what she argues are legacy media figures, and replace them with propagandists. And so when you realise that the Associated Press, America's leading news agency, was penalised by the White House because it refused to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America.
Yeah.
That was on her watch. She completely eviscerated the rights of the White House Correspondents Association to run the briefing room. And as a result, when Donald Trump is present before cameras, and there's a limited pool of cameras and reporters and now propagandists that are allowed into the room, you will often hear that most of the questions get asked by the propagandists and not by the real reporters. And that is, for the moment at least, her lasting legacy. She's changed the nature of the press operation at the White House in ways that previously were completely unthinkable.
Making Kellyanne Conway look like
totally.
a paragon of virtue,
Absolutely.
honesty and moral probity. I've asked you this a billion times, but do you still pinch yourself sometimes when you look at what's happened?
Yes. I mean, I'm now at the point where nothing surprises me anymore. And I think we're in for a very unsurprising and yet surprising few months ahead as we head toward the midterm elections. I mean, he's made it clear. He said in an interview to, again, one of these propagandists this week, that, it's not inconceivable that he's going to have to declare a state of emergency.
He's saying it out loud.
Absolutely out loud. Yeah. Absolutely. Lassie is definitely trying to tell us something very clearly.
Most of the media still, the ones that aren't technically propagandists, still not quite sure how to handle this stuff. Briefly, if you would, I mean, I'll read the headline, shall I? ICE plans to equip agents with gloves that can deliver electric shocks.
It's absolutely a staggering story, complete Dr. Evil stuff. This is a piece of kit called the Generated Low Output Voltage Emitter. And the acronym, of course, is GLOVE. And that's because it is a glove that can deliver up to 380 volts of electricity if you place it on another human being.
Yeah.
3 times the charge of a standard US power outlet. ICE is planning to spend $20 million, nearly 15 million quid, to buy these gloves and equip Donald Trump's thuggish ICE agents who are still, and we don't talk about this enough, every single day rounding up 2,000 people in their quest to engage in the president's mass deportations. I looked at the numbers. There are, as of July the 11th, which is the last set of numbers that the Department of Homeland Security has issued, 65,765 people held in ICE detention facilities across America. And the president says they're the worst of the worst. But by the US government's own figures, 70.6% of them, nearly 3/4, have no criminal conviction. They've been convicted of no criminal offence. And this potential use of, electric gloves to force compliance on the part of people, whether they are being rounded up or already in detention, is just, yet more Dr. Evil stuff as the country's dystopian trajectory continues.
And of course, as with all dystopias, you're left wondering about the type of people that would want to wear them in the first place, because that's probably the bit we always miss, isn't it?
Yeah,
that they walk among us.
But when you say that, James, think back to the reflecting pool,
yeah,
and to the 3-time Olympian canoeist who has just discovered that he's not going to face a possible 10-year jail sentence for destruction of government property because the Department of Justice concedes he didn't vandalise the reflecting pool. It was Donald Trump's.
Was floating in the water.
It was Donald Trump's contractor who botched that operation. What's the link here? Well, Donald Trump made it clear he wanted people arrested for vandalism, and in the case of David Hearn, that 3-time Olympian canoeist, immediately the U.S. Park Police and the Secret Service the National Guard snapped to attention. I mean, that tells you something about what's taking place in some of these law enforcement agencies in the US.
It's a brilliant point. And as indeed is, I've lost it now, but a caller in Portsmouth, a texter in Portsmouth, just pointing out that this is unheard of, the idea of being deployed at sea for that amount of time would strike, send it in his own words, sends a shiver down the spine of a naval veteran currently serving in the British Navy. Thank you, Simon. Always worth remembering, I think, that Richard Littlejohn over at the Daily Mail has never been more ashamed to be British than when Keir Starmer. Here it is from Kirk in Portsmouth. I am a serving naval officer. The thought of 250 plus days at sea sends shivers down my spine. It represents an absolute abrogation of responsibility by US Navy leadership. This is what we mean by the people who might wear the gloves or jump to the commands. Loyalty, writes Kirk, is a two-way street.
250 days at sea, 40 of them in combat.
Wow. Simon Marks, thank you. We should see more of you. I say it every time I see you, but I really mean it this time.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 7 minutes after 11. Great piece in the Times today by Hugo Rifkind, one of my favourite columnists, who writes under the headline, "Where are all those climate deniers now?" Something that we touched on yesterday. There were a couple in my inbox, but I couldn't tell whether they were tongue-in-cheek or not, or whether they were just passionate applications for inclusion in Idiot's Corner. It is extraordinary how that strand of conversation or journalism has more or less disappeared as the heat waves continue. And just talking to Simon Marks there and reflecting upon Dick Littlejohn at the Daily Mail, thinking that he'd never been more ashamed to be British than when Keir Starmer declined to join Donald Trump's insane war in Iran, a war so awful that American naval officers are now, they're now approaching suicidality on the USS Abraham Lincoln because the people in charge of that campaign, the people in charge of that so-called war, are such dangerous and disgusting idiots. Mad to think about that. So it occurred to me, you don't hear Trump derangement syndrome very much anymore either, do you? As the ICE operatives prepare to be issued with gloves that can deliver electric shocks as they carry out their law enforcement duties. I'm going to step away from the climate. I just have nothing but good wishes for people who've received their A-level results today, whether it is congratulations or commiserations. Do you know, one of the first lessons I learned from Nick Ferrari, who'd already been at LBC for 74 years, I think, when I arrived here, one of the first lessons that I learned from Nick was how to behave on A-levels day. Because my kids, in fact, when I started in this job, I didn't even have children, whereas his were already around the public examination age. And so I'm thinking of coming on air with a sort of, what's the point of GCSEs, or do you really need to go to university? And he didn't tell me this face to face. I just listened to him while I was preparing to come on air, and he just explained that you can't do that on a day. So it's almost like every other day of the year you can have those conversations, but on a day like today, you just don't go near it. You just offer nothing but goodwill and good wishes to the young people who have had probably the most stressful and anxious experiences of their life over the last few months, and now it is over, and some people will be cock-a-hoop, and other people will think that their life is over. And all I would say to the people in the latter group, I promise you it isn't. Even the doors that you think may have slammed shut in front of you this morning have not slammed shut. They remain ajar. Your options are still there. There are things that you can still do, and the path that you thought you wanted to go down may not have been the path for you in the first place. But you will never hear on this programme, or indeed on Nick's, any poo-pooing about the public exams and the people who've sat them on the days that those results come out. It's the end of the line for me as well. It's my youngest. We are in the former category. We are happy with what has happened today, but my youngest is now out of the woods. That's it now. So that's it now as a parent, right? If I understand it correctly, I don't have to ever worry again about picking. They're entirely self-sufficient. Don't need any more money from me, don't need any support or help or accommodation or any of those. It's amazing that. What an extraordinary liberation. 11:11 is the time. Andy Burnham's devolution push will drive 90,000 bankers and lawyers out of London, figures suggest. Let's all resist the temptation, everybody in London, resist the temptation to say, don't let the door smack you on the backside on the way out. But this is a broader story, of course, about potential refocusing. You'll be aware that the Prime Minister wants to boost regional economies. A recruitment agency has done some research which finds that will, perhaps inevitably when you think about it, see white-collar jobs that are traditionally located in the capital shift to other big UK cities by 2031. And remember, you won't be living in the cities. It's a heck of a lot easier to live in the sticks if your office is in Manchester or Birmingham than it is if your office is in London. We have long commutes, of course, but it is a massive lifestyle change for people. You're also seeing London's high cost of living, forcing white-collar professionals, and this is the upper echelon of professionals, bankers and lawyers, to seek alternative locations for their careers. Manchester, Leeds and Birmingham being the biggest winners. They reckon those three cities will take over half of the relocated jobs, and they reckon at the moment that those relocated jobs could run to about 100,000, and that's exclusively bankers and lawyers. So goodness knows who else in that category is likely to find themselves moving away from the capital to a different part of the country. We have, and this is one of the things Andy Burnham has got absolutely right, and he's got it right from the inside as well, and from the very beginning of his premiership. We have one of the most centralised economies of all the countries in the OECD. London generates about 1 in every £4 that the nation generates. So about a quarter of the money generated in this country is generated in London, and that is going to change, with the North West set to be the biggest beneficiary. And I don't know what it would be like. It's mad that, given that I grew up in Kidderminster and half of my heart is still there, the other half is pure London now. I don't know what it would be like to leave. A couple of pals of mine left during lockdown and came back. Albeit they didn't move to other cities, they moved it more rurally and did not find it an unalloyed pleasure. The novelty wore off very quickly. But if you're moving to another city, what differences can you expect? I got a lovely message off Henry yesterday, who was in Kidderminster, reporting on the blind horse that's learning Braille, a wonderful little package that you may have heard earlier on LBC. And I got a lovely message off Henry, including a photograph of Kidderminster Station, at which point I, of course, advised that he had his lunch at Captain Codd's fish and chip shop just over the road from there. And he commented on how friendly everybody was. And he couldn't quite believe how friendly everybody was in Kidderminster. And that's one of the first things you hear, isn't it, when you are London born and bred, one of the first things you hear from people who are not is how unfriendly everybody is when they come here. Disarmingly friendly is how Henry described it. I think that's partly because of Henry's face, don't you? Henry's got such a lovely face. How can you not smile when you see Henry coming towards you with his goofy grin and his bouncy demeanour? It would be like not smiling at Tigger, wouldn't it, if you were wandering through 100 Acre Wood? Up bounds Henry. Hello, can you talk to me about a blind horse? It's lovely stuff to see old Henry bounding down Cumberton Hill in Kidderminster. So it may be partly a personal thing that meant that he encountered such high levels of friendliness, or it may be that it is, once again, an example of what happens when you get outside London. And that's the question. Got Mystery Hour coming up at 12. Guy Shrubsole will be joining us before that to talk us through the most extraordinary juxtaposition of stories in the news today about grouse moors and wildfires. I often point out to you how the same story can be treated in very different ways according to which organ it is or which outlet it is that you're hearing or reading the story from. But I've rarely seen a contrast quite as stark as the one I've seen today, although I think I've worked out at least one major reason why one newspaper is pursuing the angle that it is pursuing. So that's all to come. Before that, you moved. You left London. What happened? That's it. That's the phone-in. You don't need any more detail than that. You don't need any more qualification or complication. The more recent it was, perhaps the more interesting it will be, although not necessarily. I'm always fascinated to hear stories from people who were evacuated during the Second World War. But it is for people who are hearing the story now about the big jobs, some of the big jobs moving out of the capital. What is it actually like? What are the surprises? What are the pleasures? What are the pitfalls?
James O'Brien on LBC.
I don't think we'll ever leave, actually. I even when perhaps I hang up my headphones, I can't quite imagine. If we can afford it, I'd love to have another place somewhere else near the seaside or something like that. Probably in this country, to be honest with you. But I can't ever imagine not living in London. And that makes me sound like a bit of a prig, right? That makes me sound like one of them. And growing up in Kidderminster, the people who sort of shook the dust from their shoes and never came back. I remember upsetting a friend of my parents who just literally overheard me. I mean, the moral of the story is don't eavesdrop on 19-year-olds, but he got the right old hump with me when he heard me saying, I couldn't ever move back to Kidderminster once I'd spent a year in London. But I lived in Manchester for a year. I reckon I could make a go of it there, but I couldn't really conceive of circumstances in which I'd choose to leave. But more and more people have done. More and more people will. It's getting really expensive. You can tell how many people are leaving London by the state of the primary schools. Did you know that? Primary schools facing closure and ever-shrinking classes because the people who are living in the central areas of the capital city can not longer really afford to have children. They are much more likely to be older, and therefore the primary schools are shrivelling. So it is really a question of... I think we are a two-tier nation, not in the sort of racist way that some politicians like to claim, but just in the that simple statistic there. And also, of course, the reason why fascists around the world and various online racists profess to hate London is because we are such a wonderful example of all the things that racists hate, like, cohesion and community, diversity and equality. London is a flawed city, but an absolute paragon of all of the things that racists most despise. So when you leave London, there will be a bit of a shock to the system, I think, particularly if you are of colour. Not necessarily in the big cities, but certainly in a lot of the other places as well. What happened when you quit the capital? Paul's in Canterbury. Paul, what happened?
What happened was nearly 2 years ago, we moved down here from London. I'm a London boy, born and bred, now retired. And I thought it was going to be a hell of a wrench. We wanted a change of scene, wanted to get a detached house, and that would have meant, in London, it would have meant crippling our souls even further. So we looked at a couple of towns in Northamptonshire, even looked at Kidderminster a few years ago, but just decided that those places weren't for us. We're a mixed couple.
Hang on a minute. What was wrong with Kidderminster?
We just couldn't quite get the feel of the place, James. I'm not being negative,
All right.
but you know when you just find, like, you settled in Brentford, you
Yes,
love it there,
I
don't
do.
you?
I do indeed.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And the thing is, we're a mixed couple, so obviously in London it's nice and easy.
Yes.
But what ticked the boxes for us in Canterbury was, when we used to come down occasionally to the theatre, because high-speed train from Stratford, 45 minutes, was the fact that with the universities and the visitors, it's a multiracial and multicultural mix of people here.
So you get a kind of mini London type vibe, do you, or not? Is that
you get a mini type London vibe, but it's also the fact is within 10 minutes walk, we're in open countryside to the back of where we live. We were effectively surrounded three sides by the sea: Whitstable up the north, Dover and Folkestone down the south, and Margate and Ramsgate to the, out that way, to the east.
What are the downsides?
The only downsides are it's the fact of how long it takes to get into London. That's the thing. And there's sometimes been, we used to live within 20 minutes walk of Romford Station. So if it was one of those miserable Sunday afternoons in February, you could hop on the Elizabeth line, get off at Farringdon for the Barbican Centre, Tottenham Court Road for Chinatown and all the rest of it. So it's a little bit, it's having to adapt that way. But overall, it's like people are friendly, more relaxed. And also, because I like my ale, there are some very, very wonderful...
I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm interrupting you when you're talking about beer. It's one of my top 10 favourite subjects. But, you're not going to get caller of the week for this, are you? Because you're retired. So you're describing leisure, really. You're describing... a different stage of life from the people who are likely to relocate at the beginning of their careers, and what differences they could expect as a consequence of doing so.
That's a fair comment, but it's still
not a criticism.
But when you get to to my age, it's like uprooting yourself is sometimes can feel that little bit harder. But people are friendlier. There's a more it's I don't know how to describe it, James. It's like there's an essence here that, and London I always found was friendly.
But there's a different vibe in the air. Well, that's it. I said yesterday when we were talking about the eclipse that my favourite phone-ins are the ones about putting into words things that are quite hard to put into words. So when I hear you say the words, I don't know quite how to describe it, James. That makes my little ears prick up. Actually, my quite big ears prick up, and makes me think, well, someone else has got to put it into words. What is it that you get out of London and the air changes? What is it that changes? And listen, working age, if you like, career-based decisions as well, 0345 6060 973. 90,000 professionals are set to move out of London, and that's just in the banking and legal sectors, so you can probably triple that when you've factored in everything else that is historically described as white collar. What warnings would you give them? Seriously, if someone has only ever lived in the capital, what warnings would you give them about making tracks somewhere else, starting somewhere else? What warnings would you give them? What advice would you give them? What experiences would you share? 0345 6060 973. Paul is in. Two Pauls, from Canterbury to Leeds. Paul's in Leeds. Paul, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Good to speak to you. So, I made the move from Leeds to London about 30 years ago. Lived down in London for 20 years in Hanwell and Chiswick, Richmond, those kind of areas. And I've now actually moved back to Leeds about 5 years ago. Moved back to Leeds, but spend a lot of my time commuting back down to London.
What are the differences?
I think the cadence of life a little bit, right? So
cadence is a lovely word, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great living in Yorkshire. It's kind of, I'll see you at the pub at this time. There's no rush. There's just kind of, you get to meet your friends. You get to have a lovely laid back life, but then jump on the train in Leeds, 2 hours and back in London, and there's that kind of, I wouldn't say excitement, but, faster cadence. I work within the AI industry, so it's very fast-moving, very, quick. I also work with government as well, so that's based down there in London. But being able to hop on the train, 2 hours in London, Elizabeth line, you can be where you need to be within 20 or 30 minutes. Stay in London if I need to be on that Elizabeth line, staying in Ealing, wherever it might be. So I think there is a difference in the pace.
Why did you make the decision? What prompted you to make the move back?
I think it was housing, to be honest. Looking at housing I was living in Hanwell at the time, looking at it in that kind of area. I was on the Heathrow flight path, a small terraced house. I could come back to where I am now and have, maybe an acre of land almost, and a much bigger house for what would have been a very small house down there.
This is probably going to be the way forward, isn't it? I mean, we talk a lot about working from home, but we don't really discuss it as a reason for moving home. But the way you describe it, the logic is impeccable, isn't it? The idea that your earnings are still going to be sort of Londonish weighted, but your lifestyle is going to be much less expensive.
Yeah, you can work from home for a couple of days or even a week and then get down there. I think a big difference would be little things like internet access on a train. Everything we use these days, tools need internet access to be productive on those journeys.
Got it,
People talk about faster train times, but just having good internet would be, a
game changer as well. I'd tell you why. If I lived in Hanwell, one reason why I'd find it very hard to leave. The golden chip.
Oh, I love that place, yeah.
It's arguably the best chippy in town. And by that, I don't mean Hanwell, I mean London.
North,
I know my way around the fish and chip shops of North Yorkshire, so I take your point. But if you're in the southeast, you will not do better than the golden chip in Hanwell.
There's a few nice bars around there, great.
There is. I get it. I mean, you're making sense. What we're not getting is the... I love that word, cadence. The description of the cadence. That's what I want next. 0345 6060 973. The things that are harder to put into words about the difference. How did your life change? What about parenting? What about the children? You're leaving the capital to go somewhere else. What's going to be different about their childhood compared perhaps to yours? 0345 6060 973. It's 11:30.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:34 and you are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. 90,000 lawyers and bankers set to leave London and head towards other big cities. You can't criticise me for only talking about northern cities if the cities that are mentioned in the story are Manchester, Birmingham and Leeds. By all means, if you want to ring in and answer the question of what it's like to leave, what's it like to shake the dust of London town from your sandals and head off, particularly if you weren't expecting this to happen, then you can go wherever you want. I take calls from Bristol, Cardiff, lovely part of the world. There's all sorts of places you can go. But the problem with Londoners is that we forget that anywhere else exists. Not in a bad way, not in a cliched way, like, Watford Gap, M25 or anything like that, but everything is here. Let me read you this from a former Londoner. I left London and found that in Hampshire, they're a weird mix of standoffish and prurient with a massive side order of racism. In London, people may mind their business, but they help if you need it. London is life. Who thinks of Ted Lasso when they hear that line? Football. London is life. Everything happens there. The dearth of activity outside of the capital is really starkly highlighted, especially in the school holidays. This is a rural perspective. This is not an urban perspective. There's loads going on in cities and big towns, but there's nothing on in the countryside unless you spend 2 hours going into the city on the train. London's heartbeat, this is beautiful, this is poetic, is a thrum of excitement. Outside of the city, it's the lub-dub of pre-sleep. That kind of speaks to the scale or the tone or the cadence of change. Nitin is in St. Neots. What would you like to say? I'm trying to think of something funny to say about the fact that your name is quite similar to your location, but I've got nothing. Carry on.
It's good. It's good. I've spoken to you before, James. I always seem to call you well. I've called you twice now, and both times have been when something has massively resonated with me. Last time it was a school teacher, a drama teacher I told you about at the time when I was younger as a kid who had a massive effect on my life and me becoming an actor and all the rest of it. Now, this is specifically about a warning to all Londoners. Do not leave. Do not leave. Park your bottoms back on your seat. Do not close the right move on the old browser. There's nothing to see here. Right, you're in the best city in the world. Do not do it. I did it about 8 years ago now, and usual story. Couple of young kids wanted a house, lived in a flat in Angel, and obviously needed more space. My ex-wife's parents live out here in in Cambridgeshire, and we thought, it'd be great for childcare and all the rest of it, and you got all these ideas in your head. But I remember my friend who now lives in Berlin, Ian, said to me at the time, he was like, mate, are you sure you know what you're doing here? You know.
What year was this? Sorry.
This was 2018.
Oh,
and he was
okay.
like, you more than anyone I know, really, like, you know, if we go to some old man's pub, whatever, and it's a bit dead, I'm always like, can we go somewhere else? My mates always say to me, mate, you're with your friends, we're all chatting to each other. Why do you need this atmosphere that you're always searching for? I was like, we're in London. Why are we sitting in this pub for? We could be in any pub in the bloody city, you know, all that kind of stuff. And he said, I've always been like that. And he said to me, mate, you don't want to be moving out there into sort of, you know, Tory, white, provincial sort of... It's just not for you. I could have said, obviously, I'm Indian. You probably got that by my name in anyway, but Geordie accent sometimes puts people off. So, yeah, and being Asian as well, you know, it's massively affected how I feel I'm seen.
Yeah.
Never noticed the colour of my skin living in Newcastle or in London after that for 18 years. And then all of a sudden, coming out here, you know, I remember my first experience. I was out in the pub and I put the jukebox on, you know, put a couple of quid in the jukebox, and a fella shouts over to me, you're not going to put Bollywood on there, are you? I couldn't believe it. I was going to whack away. It's just a bit of charlatans on there, that's all. You know what I mean?
It'd be quite an odd jukebox, wouldn't it, that had Bollywood classics on it anyway?
I couldn't believe it. And I noticed it then. I was like, oh, God, this is weird. This is a strange thing. You know, people are just picking it out. And I've had a few more serious issues now. I've been, you know, walking down the street one day in the evening, going out for a drink, and and this young kid shouts at me, Osama.
Really?
You know, I just could not believe it. And normally I wouldn't stop. I stopped this kid and I said to him, look, what's going on with you, mate? What did you shout that for? I was like, you've embarrassed your friends all around you here.
Yeah.
He's outside the pub having a cigarette. And I ended up having a chat with him. And I said, you know what, let me come in here and buy you a drink. You know, I went in there and I bought him a drink. This is just after I moved into the area. And we all had cocktails, and I bought them all a drink, him and his friends and all that, and we had a good chat. It turns out he goes to university, this kid, but this is the town he's from. His friends were all embarrassed. I told them I was an actor, mentioned a few of the shows that I'd been on. They were all very embarrassed, but it took me to sort of, you know, dial up the Geordie accent, tell them that I'm kind of one of them and all that kind of stuff, for them to almost be embarrassed by it. But it was kind of an interesting little thing that I did there because, you know, go on.
No, you go on.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, because as an experiment, you know, it was interesting to do because if I walked past and just ignored it, you know, whatever perception he had, he would have just kept on having. So when I tell people that, they say, well, if you change one person's sort of opinion slightly, but it's a shame that you had to do that.
I was going to say, I mean, some people wouldn't be able to do that, would they? Some people wouldn't want to, and some people wouldn't have the wherewithal, and some people would be a little bit outraged.
But there's a feeling in these towns, James, and I don't know what it is, but look, I'm not saying it's, you know, there's a group of us here, right, where you kind of gravitate towards ex-Londoners, and there's a lot of young London professionals here who kind of settled and did the same thing, and we all sort of look at each other shaking our heads. Sort of,
well, you're describing familiarity. So, you know, if there were lots of Asian lads in the pub, no one would make comments about Bollywood. So and it's not in and of itself a racist, well, it technically, I suppose, drawing attention to your ethnicity, but he wasn't actually mocking you or insulting you or planning to hurt you or anything like that. It is just, it's a bit like pointing at planes, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You're pointing at something that you haven't really seen much of before.
You're only 40 minutes outside London.
Yeah, I know, but,
it's just
you know,
crazy to me, you know. But
that's how Brexit happened, isn't it? I mean, people were persuaded that their own communities were about to be overrun by Geordies called knitting.
Exactly, and the thing is, I was really affected by Brexit, and I was living in London at the time, you know, when it all happened, and as in like how it made me feel, and so moving to somewhere like this a couple of years later probably wasn't the best idea for me to do. But look, I mean,
will you go back? I mean, tricky then, family-wise and stuff, is it?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm sort of 50-50 with the kids. And the one thing I will say is, if you do end up being divorced, it's a great place to be because of property prices. You can do it. You know what I mean?
You can afford two homes. You can afford both to get somewhere nice,
and you can put the kids in a nice. So I'm here for the foreseeable. I'm 40 minutes away from London, so I work in London. I go back all the time. So, and you know, Newcastle. But you really feel it when you go back to the cities that you love. You know, like when you live in these small towns, because, you know, sometimes I just fancy a Japanese whiskey at 10 o'clock, James, you know, in a bar, and I can't get one. I want to see a wine list instead of hearing red or white. You know what I mean?
First world problem. Well, not quite first world problems, actually. Red or white. Sweet or dry. Knitted, nice one. And I mean, that is going to be a sort of subjective experience on one level and yet quite a common experience on another. What the thing that you notice, and that's St. Neots. So again, it's Cambridgeshire, it's not Manchester. If you're moving to Manchester, I don't think you're going to have any particular problems. It shrinks a bit, your world, when you move from London to Manchester or to Birmingham, but not a lot, and you're going to get an awful lot of the things that you are used to in London. You can probably even get a Japanese whiskey at 10 o'clock at night. I wonder if you can, actually. I don't know. But to be fair, I wouldn't know where to get one in London. It is 11:42. Hi, James. I grew up in Kidderminster, writes Freddie. I moved to London and then I moved to New York and I recently moved to Manchester. Where do you think he's going with this? Because I'm thinking he's going to end it with, and after all that, I dream of Kidderminster. No. He goes, and after all that, all I want to do is jump on the train and go down to London for the day. Not Kidderminster, mate. Everybody's so friendly there. It is, Henry Riley told me, it's 11:42. Charlie is in Honeybourne, which is not a million miles away from Kidderminster, actually. Charlie, what made you pick up the phone?
Hi, James. An absolute pleasure to speak to you, sir.
Likewise.
I've never wanted to pick up the phone so much, but we moved, my partner, myself, my 6 cats, to Honeybourne just a year ago.
Right.
And we previously lived in Wimbledon and Morden.
Gosh.
And it is absolutely the best move that we've ever done.
What prompted it? Because that's quite a big shift. Was it somebody's job or was it just a complete change of air?
No. So I still work in London, but I have to go down twice a week. My partner works from home most of the time, but can also jump on the train.
Yes.
I got beaten up pretty badly by a bunch of 14-year-old girls a couple of years ago and just kind of fell out of love. I've been in London all my life. I'm now 53. And it's just brilliant. It's such a gorgeous village. The people can't do enough to help you. You still got your characters. You got, we can't have dogs, but everybody's got a dog. And it's just a wonderful community. And everybody says hello when you get out of your house. And
that is a really jarring thing for Londoners, actually. Keith and I were talking about this. First time he started going to Cornwall a lot, people just say hello all the time, and you're just walking down the street and they say, hello, you're all right, I'm all right, you're all right. And that is not normal behaviour.
Yeah, and you forget when you go back to London and you just go, oh, hi.
Yeah.
And people look at you and you go, oh, I'm not in Kansas anymore.
What made you choose Honeybourne? Because it's near Evesham, isn't it? Cotswolds, kind of on the edges of the Cotswolds. People don't realise Worcestershire has some Cotswolds. Yeah, but how did you end up there from Wimbledon?
We had one house fall through, and one of my very, very dear friends, Liz, she lives in Carterton.
So you just loved it. So you could have gone anywhere, though. Is the point that I'm making? There was no particular connection with this area apart from a good friend. There wasn't like family reasons or.
No, not in the slightest. We just absolutely love the Cotswolds. Everything's basically 20 minutes away. I was just on my way to Tesco's, which is 20 minutes away.
Yeah, completely different.
And the lack of traffic. Yeah. I do not miss the traffic in London at all. So if anybody wants to make the move, people can have good and bad experiences, but ours has been nothing.
I'm just fascinated by how you decide where you're going to go. It's a little bit of me that would sort of relish the idea of just sticking a pin in a map and trying to set up home wherever the pin was stuck. But I don't know that I would ever be able to drag myself away from the big smoke. 11:45 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. The element of this story that I missed, of course, is not necessarily that the jobs are being moved away from the capital, but that actually the way that we work and our relationship with work is changing, as we've discussed a lot on the programme, and the idea of needing to be chained to a very specific desk in a very specific building in a very specific city for 5 days of every week is no longer true. There's been a little bit of pushback to the working from home mania that overtook us inevitably during lockdowns, but the central, it just meant that things that probably would have happened naturally over a period of 20 years were enormously catalysed and accelerated by COVID. So, of course, if you've got the technological capability to do your job at home, then you will want sometimes to do your job at home. And if you're doing your job at home, you don't need to be in the part of the country where property is immensely more expensive than it is absolutely everywhere else. And that is one of the reasons, I put it to you, my lud, my learned friends on the jury, I put it to you, that's one of the reasons why there is a small crisis in primary school numbers in London.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 10 to 12, or Mystery Hour minus 10, as it is known nowhere, really. I just made it up. But anyway, Mystery Hour with us in 10 minutes' time. Before that, a few stories, well, 2 or 3 stories. I said to you that we need to, obviously, continue our conversations about climate change, not least because we're in another heat wave today. The first one was in May, was it? This is mad now. Who's confident that this is the last one? Could there be another one around the corner? Who would be shocked if there was? And as we discussed yesterday, this is not the new normal. It's not the new normal until we achieve net zero, and then you can just about begin to have a conversation about the status quo or about stabilisation. For now, this is probably the coldest summer that you will ever experience moving forward. Coldest summer. Sorry, I'll say that again for the benefit of people at the back. This is almost certainly the coldest summer you will ever experience. And it was somewhat comical yesterday to be talking about a COBRA meeting, which I know it only stands for Cabinet Office Briefing Room A, but it does make you think that something massive is about to happen. COBRA! It's just, even the word makes you sort of sound like you're doing the voiceover on a Hollywood movie in 1984. COBRA! In fact, there is a film starring Sylvester Stallone called COBRA, so I'm not going mad. And as I told you yesterday, there was a roller coaster at West Midlands Safari Park called the COBRA. And then they announced a possible future ban on disposable barbecues. Should have been called the Hamster. Should have been a hamster meeting, not a COBRA meeting, if all they're going to do is announce a possible ban on disposable barbecues. So I wanted to talk to Guy Shrubsole for one reason, actually, was because it was your Freedom of Information request, I think, that revealed... Well, you tell us how many members of DEFRA staff are currently working on adapting to the climate crisis, Guy. Hello.
Hello, James. Good to speak to you again. Yes, it was extremely alarming to discover, after I put in a Freedom of Information request to the Environment Department, to DEFRA, that just 20 members of staff at the government's Environment Department are working on climate adaptation. And this is out of over 6,600 staff. And, I just looked at that and I thought, we are so unprepared for the climate crisis that we are now in. The world is on fire, Britain is on fire. As you say, we're in our 5th heat wave of the summer. It's the hottest summer ever, I think, according to the Met Office. We seem to not be doing nearly enough to prepare for this. I think the Climate Change Committee, I think even a couple of years ago now, and these are the government's independent advisors on climate change, they said that there's been a lost decade for climate adaptation in this country. So, you might be able to say that a lot of this is down to austerity and the Tories cutting important resources, deregulating and so on. But, this current government really does also need to get a grip. And it was disappointing, actually, to, I've had a lot of hope for Andy Burnham as the Prime Minister. But it was disappointing to hear the readout of yesterday's COBRA meeting being, let's ban disposable barbecues. Great.
Let's possibly ban disposable.
Oh, let's possibly ban. Well, let's do that by all means. Yeah. But there's some bigger issues at play here, not least the climate crisis and the burning of fossil fuels, but also the way that we have mismanaged our land. And that has turned it into a tinderbox.
We'll come to that in one moment. Before that, we tried on the programme yesterday to posit ideas that the government might announce or that we might like to see alongside the piece about your Freedom of Information request in today's Guardian. They've put together 10 policies that Number 10 could and indeed should announce right now, veering from the obvious, which would be a rejection of new licences for oil and gas fields in the North Sea, through to bigger windfall taxes, but also, as you've just touched upon, regenerative agriculture, being encouraged to increase food resilience, planting more trees, protecting existing nature. And that would urge people to have a look at that list of 10. Implement a maximum workplace temperature would help everybody as well. But it wasn't a story that because I saw you posting about the Freedom of Information yesterday. I wasn't expecting to be talking to you about the next story on our little agenda today until I got to work, and I saw an extraordinary juxtaposition of journalism, where one newspaper elected to report on its front page, actually, on grouse shooting and rewilding being the cause of wildfires. I'll say that again. This is the front page of the Daily Mail, alleging that rewilding is the cause of wildfires, although they didn't seem to have any actual scientific evidence for that. It was just a bunch of people from the grouse shooting community, really, who were arguing against not being allowed to set fire to grouse moors in order to ensure that the heather grows back in a way that encourages more grouse to breed so that they can shoot them next August, or this August, on the 12th of this month. But then if you turn to other, and the Daily Telegraph, Labour set sights on game shoots after caving to pressure from RSPB. But if you looked at the same story in The Guardian, it's the opposite. It's the fact that the drying out of moors, the draining of peat in particular, creates circumstances where wildfires are much more likely to spread. So what's the truth?
You've hit the nail on the head there, James. And just to return to what the Daily Mail headline is, front page splash, rewilding link to record fires. If you read the actual piece, there's zero evidence cited for this extraordinary claim in the piece. There's no stats, there's no data, there's no independent studies. There is just, as you say, a bunch of spurious accusations made by some highly biased vested interests who represent the owners, very wealthy owners of very large grouse moors in this country. And, you've got the Country Land and Business Association, CLA, whose members own, by their own admission, a third of the land in England and Wales. You've got the Moorland Association being quoted, whose members own or manage, quote, over 1 million acres of the moorlands of England and Wales. And, not many people perhaps are aware of the fact that vast swathes of our uplands in England are dominated by these grouse moor estates, where very rich people go and shoot grouse each year, as you say, on the so-called glorious 12th of August, which just took place yesterday. But what they do is that between each October and April each year, they actually deliberately set fire to the moorland that they own. And they do this for one very simple reason. It's in order to maximise the number of grouse they can then shoot during the shooting season. And, for them, what they've done is they have turned... These guys have actually done the work of turning England into a tinderbox, because they've drained and burned huge areas of peat bogs, which should naturally be very, very wet and very, very good at retaining rainfall and moisture. And what instead they've done is they've turned it into a heather monoculture, a monoculture of heather, which is preferred by red grouse, which they then go out and shoot. So for them to have the gall to turn around and start lobbying for deregulation to, open up the ability for them to burn more of their huge grouse estates each year is quite extraordinary, really.
Even by the standards of misinformation, a feature on this programme that I think you might have helped us with in the past, and my tireless attempts to highlight how the same so-called, or quote, story can be reported from polar opposite positions by different media outlets. This was particularly breathtaking. My favourite bit, and I know you picked up on this, was they've got a picture of a fire under the headline on the front page, rewilding link to record fires, and they had to caption the picture of a fire with these words: there is no suggestion this fire was as a result of rewilding. Presumably, if they could find a fire where there was even the vaguest suggestion that the fire was a result of rewilding, they'd have used that photo guy.
Well, I checked the online version of the story, and they have 3 separate pictures of recent wildfires, and under each of them they have to say there is no suggestion this fire was as a result of rewilding. They have no examples of where rewilding has caused these wildfires. The fact of the matter is that there are thousands and thousands of drainage ditches that have been cut into our uplands by landowners over the last century and a half in order to deliberately send water out of the uplands and faster downstream. Now, that does 2 things. At this time of year, it makes our peat bogs much drier than they ought to be. And secondly, in winter, when we get even worse and increasingly worse rainfall because of the climate crisis, people get flooded more downstream as a result of this. So, these are not the people, these landowners, these grouse moorers are not the people we should be turning to talk to and learn about how to make our country more resilient to climate change.
It occurred to me reading it this morning that it's almost a microcosm of the old climate change debate, which does happily seem to be almost over now. And Hugo Rifkin in the Times today commenting on the fact you don't really hear the hardcore climate change deniers, where once you couldn't avoid them, they'd be on Newsnight, they'd be all over the Daily Telegraph, they'd be writing in the Mail. That I guess position has become untenable given what's happening outside everybody's window as we speak. But this is like a microcosm of it, because this is my pleasure or my profit is more important than the environment or the planet. So where the grouse moor is an analogy for the planet, and the grouse shooter as an analogy for the fossil fuel industries. We demand that we can carry on doing what we've always done and stuff the consequences.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, to be honest, today's Daily Mail headline and many of the other articles that have been appearing in the press, in the right-wing press, particularly in recent weeks, they are just simply a concerted campaign to try and remove some of the very sensible restrictions that both Tory and Labour governments have put in place on this very damaging practice of regularly burning moorland. The fact of the matter is that, you know, we hear the grouse moor industry trying to say, oh, we need to burn more of our grouse moors because that helps reduce fuel load and all this sort of stuff. The fact of the matter is you don't fight fire with fire. You fight it with water. You fight fire with water.
You heard it here first.
and this is why we absolutely need the government to be intervening in a far more concerted way than just saying, let's ban disposable barbecues. As important as that is, we really need to be transforming the way in which we use land in this country. I really wish that this Labour government did have a rewilding drive. There isn't one. There isn't one at the moment. But
there is an attempt to limit the burning of grouse moors. That's what they're calling.
Exactly. And what we really need to be doing is to make Britain wet again.
Oh, well done. There you go. He's even got a baseball cap. Make Britain wet again. I mean, in conclusion, Guy, I mean, thank goodness, for example, it's not as if the editor-in-chief of the Daily Mail titles actually owns grouse moors in Scotland, is it? That would be ridiculous.
Well, I mean, that would be almost too hard to believe. That
Could you imagine?
Is a grouse moor owner and shooter, but, you know, allow you to draw your own conclusions about
that. I mean, God, perish the thought. Guy Shrubsole, thank you so much. Guy's latest book, The Lie of the Land, is out now, but the Lost Rainforests of Britain, Who Owns England, and any minute now, or actually out next year, the Ghosts of Chalk Country, a man who knows of what he speaks, which is just about right, isn't it? Because it's Thursday, it's 2 minutes after 12, it's Mystery Hour, the 1 hour of the week where everybody knows what they're talking about.
James O'Brien on LBC.
Oh, Mystery Hour. It's like getting into a warm bath sometimes, isn't it? Oh no, a cool bath, sorry. I remember I've got air conditioning. Who's sitting there now anywhere else in this country thinking, oh, do you know what I'd like? I'd like a warm bath. It's like getting into a cool shower, isn't it? Or jumping into the sea at the moment. The lovely soothing sounds of Mystery Hour keeping you company during the sweltering heat wave that I managed to forget about despite talking about it with Guy just a moment ago. This is Mystery Hour, your weekly opportunity to achieve the sort of satisfaction not available anywhere else on your radio. We refresh parts that other radio programmes simply cannot reach, and we do so together, always together. I benefit from your knowledge, and you, very occasionally, might benefit from mine. But most of all, we benefit from each other's curiosity. Because some of the questions might be silly, and some of them might be serious, but they will all be ineffably human. Ineffably is one of those words I shouldn't use, because I've never actually double-checked what it actually means. But it's such a lovely word, like cadence, that I just find myself slipping it into a conversation sometimes, and I need to double-check. Yes, ineffably human. It describes feelings, beauty or sadness that are too great to name. It means an extreme degree that cannot be described in words. I like that. I'm running with ineffably. Mystery Hour is an ineffably human endeavour. Shall I tell you what it is? So someone rings in with a question, right? Well, lots of people, ideally. You, for example, might ring in with a question, a mystery, a riddle, a who, a why, a what, a where, a when, a whither, a whence, even the occasional wherefore. And somebody else rings in with an answer. There aren't really any rules. You're not allowed to look stuff up, because that would make a mockery of the whole exercise, wouldn't it? If you could just Google it, or you can share the fruits of your previous knowledge, if you like. So if you did happen to look it up a couple of years ago because one of the kids asked you, Dad, why do we do, why, what is, that's fine, but you can't look it up now. You can have, anyway, you understand. I don't need to draw you a flipping diagram. And that's it. My favourite contribution of the week will win an actual Mystery Hour game. The tin is proving very popular at the moment. So you can either have the tin, the travel edition of the Mystery Hour game, or you can have the original board game. And it is worth having both, to be honest with you, because they are very different things with completely different questions and answers included in each box, one metal box, one cardboard box. And you can find out the full terms and conditions for that competition, because it is technically a competition, even though it's just me saying, yeah, that was my favourite, give them a game. It's technically a competition. It abides by all regulatory bylaws. And you can find the full terms and conditions at lbc.co.uk. Some people think I made up the game, that it never actually exists. Some people still think Keith doesn't exist, because you've never really heard his voice, except when some strange booming bass baritone bleeds out of my earphones. Keith definitely exists, and the Mystery Hour game really exists. Both of them. I can prove it to you. You can go to mysteryhour.co.uk. Chris is in Swainby in North Yorkshire. Chris, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Chris.
What would happen if you opened a can of Coke in space? So, what would happen if you had a pressurised container in the vacuum of space and you opened it? I just can't mentally conceptualise what the reaction would be. Would it be a big explosion? Would it be massively underwhelming?
Would you be able to get the can of Coke into space? Would it? So what you've got is a spaceman.
Yeah.
Coming out of a spaceship in a spacesuit with a can of Coke in his pocket.
Yeah. And he just cracks it.
And he somehow manages, because it would be hard in a spacesuit to get the ring pull off a can of Coke, wouldn't it?
I imagine NASA can make a tool for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anybody can, NASA can, so we don't need to get bogged down in the detail of it. We're positive with so the spaceman, can of Coke in space, on a spacewalk, opens the can, what happens?
What happens? A can of Coke it might be bigger pressurised containers, but a can of Coke.
Let's start with a can of Coke, because it could be absolutely nothing. It could be impossible to get the lid off, or it could explode like a bomb.
No idea.
No, indeed. I know. I love it. I love that. Where did that question come from? Just out of interest.
Honestly, I've got into Mystery Hour over the last couple of years, and I thought, what would I ask? And that was the question that popped up, and I've just been stewing on it for about a year now, and I can't break it.
Let's work it out. Well, let's hope we get an answer. We might not, of course. That is the magic of Mystery Hour, is that you never know. We roll the dice together, but we don't know what numbers are likely to come up. What would happen? I like that. It's got a sort of nice sort of simplicity to it, but then incredible complexity, quite possibly, involved in the answer. What would happen if you managed to open a can of Coke in space? Russ is in Bangor. Russ, question or answer?
Question.
Carry on, Russ.
Of the time, actually, but we can't mention it today because it's a certain day.
No, don't scare me like that. Carry on.
I'm not scaring you.
You are scaring me. How do you know whether you're scaring me or not? Being scared is not in the eye of the beholder, it's in the eye of the scared person.
Hand dryers in bathrooms.
There we go. That's safe.
Okay, so you know why we got to be careful what we say now. What's the most efficient way to dry your hands? Shake them or rub them together like you're washing your hands in thin air?
Both. You shake them before you put them under the hand dryer, and then you rub them.
Yeah. But I've watched people. Some people are shaking them, and some people are rubbing them. Not most people do a hybrid version of what you've just suggested.
So it's a rub or shake.
Some people rub and some people shake. It depends, because we've kind of been confused.
Is this a question? Is this a good question? I'm surprised you got on. I'm not going to lie. I'm not being rude. It's a criticism of my colleagues, not of you. But is this a proper question?
It's a proper question. It's keeping me awake at night.
Is it?
It is.
Can't you just do a simple experiment?
Yes, but I can't get the timer going on my phone at the same time as the rub or the shake.
Also, it would look weird, wouldn't it?
It would look. If I got my phone out in a bathroom, I'd start looking like a member of a certain party.
Set the timer and doing all that sort of thing. All right. Well, hang on. Can I rephrase the question?
Yeah. Go on. Yeah.
What is the optimal way to use a hand dryer? The optimal. So, because I don't like the binary nature of shake versus rub. What is the optimal way? Because during COVID, we were being taught how to wash our hands, weren't we?
We were.
Go on.
And actually, you asked me. You said about the shaky thing. I did learn about the shaky thing, because I once said to somebody, whoever invented hand towels has never used a single hand towel. But then there's a TED talk, really, where a guy shows you how to dry your hands with one hand towel, and it requires 12 shakes over a sink before you do it.
Yeah. Well, I think when you think about it, of course it does, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's how you use one hand towel to dry your hands.
If you've got soggy hands, then you pick up the towel and it falls to pieces in your hand. All right, you're on. Yeah, what is the optimal? And someone might know this. They might get taught it. The hand dryer engineers might get taught. It'd be nice to know, wouldn't it? What is the optimal way to use a hand dryer? And what would happen if you opened a can of Coke in space? Zenga is in Harlesden. Zenga, question or answer? Hello? 12:14 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where Mystery Hour is underway. Just to clarify one thing from the conversation with Guy Shrubsole a moment ago, I mean, it would be good to ban disposable barbecues. No one is suggesting otherwise, but it was a little disappointing to have a Cobra meeting, at the end of which, in the face of absolutely extraordinary climate crisis, all that emerged from the Cobra meeting was a suggestion that they might ban disposable barbecues. So by all means ban them. Great, no one is suggesting we shouldn't. I just think Guy and I were both a little bit taken aback by the apparent paucity of the policy pronouncements after such an important meeting.
James O'Brien on LBC.
16 minutes after 12 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I like this. This is where's it gone? Was it Tim who plays a game about who would be most likely to get a Ray Liotta with each question? So on every question, they have a little debate about who'd be most likely to get the Ray Liotta. And obviously on the can of Coke in space question, you'd be hoping for Tim Peake to ring in. I don't know who would ring in on the optimal... Can't imagine anyone getting a Ray Liotta for telling us what the optimal way to use a hand dryer is, but stranger things have happened. Let's give Zenga in Harlesden another go, but only one more go, Zenga. Question or answer?
Oh, hello. Thanks very much. I have a question.
Yes.
I'd like to know, why is it that inner city slang changes so rapidly, whereas posh slang always sort of stays the same? Because I live in the inner city area of London, and I hear this local slang changes all the time. So 1 minute people are saying famalam, next minute famalam is out and they're saying, cuz or whatever.
Yes.
And it's impossible to keep up. Whereas posh slang, when you hear Jacob Rees-Mogg or Boris Johnson...
I don't know that Jacob Rees-Mogg deploys slang, does he?
No, yeah, they do. They say, bean. They have the P.G. Woodhouse.
Oh, I see
slang.
What you mean.
And they say, good show, old bean, or when they say goodbye, they say, tink, tonk.
Pip, pip.
And if you Dickens, the slang hasn't changed. They're still saying things like absolutely topping. So the slang is exactly the same, whereas with inner city slang, it changes.
I think the question's absolutely fascinating. I think that's a brilliant question. I mean, just to be a pedant, if I may... I mean, it's not identical. So, there's a lot of stuff in Woodhouse that I think Woodhouse actually made up himself. But some of that...
Still using it, even if he made it up. People are still saying "old bean." They're still saying
"old bean" is a perfect example of what you're describing. I mean, urban slang or inner city slang just moves a heck of a lot faster. Although, I suppose, in the demotic, we would still say mate. I still say mate a lot, and mate is the equivalent to old bean, and it's not... Actually, a lot of my posh mates say mate all the time, mate. They're always saying mate. So you're talking about posh slang staying the same?
Yes.
And street slang changing all the time?
Yes. I mean, people say, whatum cuz, or whatever, and then suddenly,
it's a great question.
A month later.
Do you know what, Zenga?
No, it's old-fashioned.
Do you know what, Zenga? It's not just a great question. I go so far, Zenga, as to say it is actually a zinger.
Oh. You've made my day.
You may well have made mine, depending on whether or not we get an answer. A zinger from Zenga. 19 minutes after 12 is the time. Why does posh slang stay the same while street slang evolves and changes in often fascinating but fast ways? I love that. Ian is in Stourbridge. Ian, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Great
to be able to talk to you.
Likewise.
How can toddlers run so quickly once they escape your clutches and you find it really difficult to catch up with them? I've got sort of 3 examples of this that have happened recently, and it's just something that absolutely fascinates me.
Go on.
The first one was my nephew escaping my clutches.
Yeah.
And that was some time ago. He ran down an alley where in an area that was unfamiliar to me.
Right.
And I really panicked.
So you got worried.
But I eventually caught him, but it took a good...
I think I know why.
20 yards.
Yeah, I think I know why.
But I've seen it again since.
Go on.
My friend's little boy, she lives on a main road.
Oh.
He saw the garden gate open.
Yeah.
Fortunately, the pavement's quite wide, so she managed to get to him before he caught the road, but it was really quite scary.
Yeah.
And then the latest one was a friend up the gym. His little boy escaped it. And I mean, I'm talking about a fairly 31, 32 maybe, year-old bloke who's really fit.
And it just the first 10 to 15 yards, the toddler is enjoying an unexpected advantage.
Absolutely, and they've only got little feet and little legs, and then
but think about it though. I'm probably going to make an absolute fool of myself now.
Go on.
Again, I thought you should have said again there. You know, I left that one wide open for you, mate. Left it wide open. It's because their legs are short that they can get going quicker.
No, I shouldn't be not.
I'm going to do it using I'm going to use it using the medium of sound. All right, because you can't see me at the moment.
Yeah.
So here's the toddler, right? And here's you chasing after them. Boom, 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 boom. So obviously, as you pick up speed, they've got gravity on their side, because as Alan points out, they're not exactly running. It's more like they're falling. They're sort of falling forwards and getting their feet in front of them at a rate of knots. So they're going... And then you're behind and going dum 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 dum. So you're bound to catch them up. And if it was over 100 yards, you'd beat them by a country mile. But over that initial ignition, point, the little legs are pumping away a lot faster than the long old legs.
Yeah, I get that. But as I say, I still find it. I mean, that chap I just described in the gym was like, it was probably further than 10 yards, and it took it. It really took him the best of his strength to actually get there and get him before he was out through the doors. And
I think it'll be about acceleration versus speed. It's bound to be that. They can accelerate faster than we can, because they're lighter or their legs are shorter or something. The acceleration will be faster, even though the speed they end up at is going to be considerably slower. The journey from inertia, from stillness to maximum speed, is going to be much shorter than it is for the bigger person. Go on.
Would that be quicker off a starting block?
Yeah, of course you would. That's why we have starting blocks. It'd be weird, though, wouldn't it, if you were just sitting there on the starting block waiting for a toddler to run away and then, boom, you're off. Leverage. I'm going to get an answer. I think I'm probably about 80% there on that one, Ian.
Okay.
But I'll wait for someone to provide the last 20, or indeed to completely dismantle my own attempts at answering that question. I like that. 0345 606 0973 if you know the answer to Ian's question. You didn't see Henry Riley yesterday, did you, Ian, at all, knocking around town?
No, I'm recovering from a knee. I wouldn't be able to catch anybody at the moment. I'm recovering from a total knee replacement last Tuesday, so I'm not out and about at the moment.
Well, stay safe.
Other than down to the
I
back.
wish you a speedy recovery. Henry was in Kiddie, but of course, if he caught the train, if he was getting the Birmingham train, he'd have gone through Stourbridge. Jen is in Chiswick. Jen, question or answer?
Question, James.
Carry on, Jen.
Can you wash your freckles off?
Well, don't you like them?
I miss them. I love them. I used to have a face full of them.
Oh, your freckles. I thought you were giving me some cosmetic advice there. I thought you were sitting in judgment. Well, no, you can't wash your freckles off.
Well, where have mine gone then? I used to have a face full, and now I've got some just in my hairline, which is where I won't be taking makeup off my face for like the last 35 years.
So you think you might actually have been responsible for the freckle removal? It's a genuine question.
Yeah, I've just got a really bland face now that's freckle-free, and I miss them.
Oh, when did you notice that they were going, or did it just strike you one day that they'd gone?
Struck me about 2 years ago.
Where have all my freckles gone?
Yeah, I saw a childhood photo, and I was covered in them, lovely little freckles.
Did you have them as an adult?
I don't know. I haven't kind of...
So, because it might be... Well, think about it as your face got bigger... the freckles got stretched until they became invisible.
No, that doesn't sound right.
It does. It happens with birthmarks sometimes. A little baby has a little birthmark, and then as their face expands, the birthmark sort of becomes so stretched out that you can't see it anymore. That's obviously what's happened. What else could it be?
My face isn't that much bigger than it was when I was, say, 12.
No,
when
it is.
Covered in... No, it's not.
It is. It's about half the size again. It's about 50% bigger than it was when you were 12, your face.
So then how do you explain the ones that have remained just below my hairline?
I'm not sure I can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I thought I might. I just gave myself a little bit of space there to come out with, but I have got nothing. Because that part of your face would have expanded just as much. Well, yes, it would. Otherwise, you'd look really weird, wouldn't you?
It's quite insulting, you talking about the size of my face.
Well, there's nothing wrong with having a big old face. It's more room to smile. All the better to smile. It's turned into one big freckle, perhaps. They've joined together. I don't know. So where do all the freckles go?
Thank you.
Thank you. 26 minutes after 12 is the time. Not just Jen's freckles, of course, unless she is a freak of nature, but all the freckles that were once on a face that are no longer on a face. And it could be that you've been using some sort of product that has because you can do, it's melanin, isn't it? So you can make them come up more. So presumably, maybe there is something that you've done over the years that might have made them go away. Andy's in Shrewsbury. Andy, question or answer?
Question, please, James.
Carry on, Andy. Have you got any freckles?
Yeah, I have, actually. Yeah, I've managed to retain some of mine. Sadly, most of my hair's gone there.
Yeah, swings and roundabouts.
Losers.
Are you similarly freckled today to how you were when you were 12, or have you would you detect a change, do you think?
I notice them more in sunnier weather, actually.
Well, maybe you've got Jen's freckles then. Maybe they've kind of migrated from Chiswick to Shrewsbury. Go on then, what's your question?
So my question is, I travel all from literally Land's End to John O'Groats for work, and I've driven for many years, and I can't understand, why is it that the digital radio signal in cars and vans is so poor compared to the old FM signal?
I don't know.
It used to be
Are you sure this is true? I mean, we like DAB digital. It's our livelihood. I don't know that we should have accepted this question.
Yeah.
Listen to the app. Listen to the app. Get online and listen to the app. Is it worse, DAB digital, than FM?
Definitely.
Is it?
Definitely worse. And not only that, when it goes, it just goes. And you're left in limbo. Usually in the middle of a very important interview where you're just about to nail it home and I'm waiting for the answer. And there it goes. But on the old FM... It's very annoying. And on the old FM system, FM used to automatically scan and find you a slightly better frequency. But DAB is either on or off. And the strange thing about it is that when I look at my mobile phone at those moments when it's gone off, I've got a very good internet signal. So why is it gone?
I bet Keith knows. Do you know, Keith, this one? Kinda. No, Keith doesn't know. I should know, really. Why would I know? I don't know anything about what goes on under the bonnet of this. I don't even know which way round my own microphone goes. Keith has to keep telling
very
me.
frustrating, and
I'm
as
sorry
an
to hear
entire
this.
humanity, as an entire humanity, we've accepted a load of vehicles that we all buy in with something inside that doesn't work.
Yeah, you're on. Okay. I mean, I'm worried. I don't want to sound like I'm denigrating the technology that pays my mortgage, but it is fair to say that one is better than the other, and we don't know why. It's an odd thing as well to have replaced the superior medium with the inferior medium, but there will be reasons behind all of this, and we will find out what they are, Andy. 0345 606 0973 is the number that you need if you can answer this question, or indeed the question about the freckles, the question about how on earth can toddlers outrun adults for a bit when they're so small and slow. Why does posh slang stay the same while street slang evolves and changes constantly? That's a brilliant question, actually, from Zenga. What is the optimal way to use a hand dryer? That possibly from Russ is a less good question. I don't know, but, horses for courses. And another contender for question of the week, Chris, is what would happen if you opened a can of Coke in space? 0345 6060 973.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 12:32. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where Mystery Hour continues. What a dizzying array! What a pleasant potpourri of questions that we have this week. We'll need to get some answers on the board soon, but not necessarily just yet. Simon is in Littlehampton. Simon, question or answer?
Oh, hi, James. Got a question for you.
Carry on.
So, the direct question is, does Beethoven get PRS and all his era mates of the same era of music?
So it's a good question, that, but I think I know the answer. There's a time limit on copyright, so I know that. I know with books, you know, when you're in the bookshop and some of the old classics are like 99p. There's a section where you can buy all the Dickens and all the Jane Austens for 99p. It's because they're out of copyright, so there's no royalties being paid. And I think Cliff Richard tried to challenge it. Of all people, I don't. You know how my brain works. I've got Cliff Richard popping up now.
He's pretty close to Beethoven's age, I guess.
I thought you were going to say talent then.
No,
they're interchangeable, really, aren't they? Cliff Richard is the Beethoven de nos jours. So I'm pretty sure that it's 50 years or something like that for music, and Cliff was understandably a bit cross that some of his early work was going to move out of copyright while he was still in a position to enjoy the benefits, which is the answer to your question. So no, the descendants of Beethoven and Mozart, and even I imagine Nat King Cole, don't get any royalties from their work.
Be interested if there's a stewards on that.
It's unlikely, isn't it?
Well, as the family.
Who's going to ring in on that one then?
Who's the current Beethoven? Beethoven the 20th?
Yeah, John Beethoven. He lives in Dagenham. Lives in Dagenham. He plays down at the Dog and Duck every Friday night.
Doing his great granddad kids.
John Beethoven.
There you go. Yeah,
if there's a stewards inquiry on this, I'll give you the money myself. You can't be, otherwise there'd be all sorts of rows going on, and who got that and who got this. So round of applause for me, I think. Qualifications, I looked it up. Or I remember the Cliff Richard story, actually, but I also looked it up with books once. I can't remember why. Oh, I do remember why. I wondered if I could leave royalties to my children in the unlikely event of anyone still buying my books in the dim and distant future. And there's a time limit on books as well as on music. It is 12:35. Oh, and speaking of my writing efforts, I think the column that I've written for the iNewspaper today is. I think it's a really important point that I'm not hearing made in lots and lots of different places. So if you get the chance to have a look at that, then do. On Robert's in Oxford. Robert, question or answer?
It's a question, James.
Carry on, Robert.
Yeah, to continue the space theme from yesterday and the Coca-Cola.
Yes.
We were watching the stars last night, the shooting stars, and we saw a beautiful one. And I thought,
what shooting? No one told me about any shooting stars. You're supposed to be watching the eclipse.
Yeah. No. It's a whole sort of, it was a duo thing. It was
it linked? Were the shooting stars linked to the eclipse?
No. This is every year we go through some sort of asteroid belt.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, no one told me anyway.
So there we were, and there's beautiful shooting star, really bright. And I thought, how many people am I sharing this wish with? So how many people can see that shooting star? How far north and south? I guess east and west works less because then it gets
it's on the same axis, isn't it?
Yeah. So, but even obviously if it's dark,
you're not going to be able to answer that. How many people can see the same shooting star? Depends where.
Not people. How many? What's the furthest location?
It was the meteor shower. It was the Perseid meteor shower, wasn't it? I did know about that. I did get that memo. I probably pronounced it wrong. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So will somebody in Scotland have seen that shooting star? Will somebody in
Norfolk?
Norfolk. If they were looking up.
Yeah, I like it. I do like. I mean, no is the short answer, isn't it? Because otherwise, everyone would have seen it.
No. What the answer to what?
Well, I mean, the person in Scotland wouldn't have seen the one that you saw. I don't
know because how high is it? Obviously, they must burn up at the same height.
Yeah.
So
I can't believe I said that out loud. Everyone can see the moon, as if that's a helpful.
Yeah, it was in front of the sun last night.
It was, yeah. Everyone was looking at the moon last night. So shooting stars or meteor showers? I mean,
no, just a shooting star. Who would see the same?
But I think it was a meteor shower. I think what you saw was a meteor shower.
No, it doesn't matter. Any night of the year,
it's the same
they must
thing,
burn up at the same point. They must be just that they're a bit more intense this time of year.
I like it. Yeah, you're on. I mean, it is. I mean, it's a good question. I don't fully understand its parameters because I'm a bit slow on some subjects, but I do. So what I'm thinking is, it depends how far it flies through the sky, because you might see the beginning of its journey in one part of the country and the end of it in another part of the country, and they've both seen it, but they haven't seen what you saw. They've just seen the same thing at different stages in its trajectory. There you go. I inserted a fancy word at the end to make it sound as though I know what I'm talking about. Thank you, Robert. Let's go back to Laurie in Finsbury Park. So one of your jobs is to sort of make scripts authentic.
Yes, to make them sound like so. Like somebody will send me in a script that's meant to be set in the modern day, and I'll have to explain to them why they can't use Cockney rhyming slang. So
someone writes a script set in London and it's as if Dick Van Dyke has risen from the pages of Mary Poppins, and you have to say, no, gore lummy, Eliza Doolittle. No one talks like that. Up the apples. Right, the phone line's still not great, so give it to me quickly.
It's class. TLDR, it's class. It's immigration, working class people, and there's waves and waves of immigration.
Change versus constancy. It's change versus constancy.
Yes. But also, upper-class people, posh people, tend to have all these little codes and shibboleths. People learn them deliberately.
Great word.
Yeah, people learn them on purpose. If the line's good enough, this thing I learned recently is one of the theories for why posh people don't say their R's sometimes. Like, terribly. One of the theories for this is that after the French Revolution, when posh French people were coming over, there was an affectation among certain very posh people to stop saying R because it stands for revolution. It's very silly.
I thought you were going to say that the English people were trying to sound posh by aping the French, who couldn't pronounce their R's very well because
No, it's even sillier.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I know you've told us, but tell us again, qualifications?
I work as a script consultant.
Oh, that's wonderful. A script consultant, as I would say. I work as a script consultant. That's a lovely answer to a lovely question. Have a round of applause, Laurie. That is lovely. And it is, in a nutshell, constancy versus change. So, and also, as Laurie says, posh people kind of protecting. If you go back to one of the Mitford sisters who wrote a book with a academic from Birmingham University about you and non-you, and so if you used the word toilet, it meant that you were non-you. You were not posh. Posh people didn't. If you weren't posh, you didn't know that. You didn't know that saying toilet or settee instead of sofa was somehow a mark to posh people that you weren't posh enough. It's ludicrous. It's insanely ludicrous, but it obviously matters to some people. Otherwise, Hyacinth Bouquet wouldn't have been such a funny character. And you get it with pronunciation as well. The shibboleth is such a lovely word. But, some of the pronunciations of posh people's names are fairly ridiculous. The way that it's spelt and the way that it's pronounced are a million miles away. Beauchamp, as opposed to Beecham. So you see Beauchamp written down, which is French, I think, for beautiful field originally. So Beecham Square is spelt Beauchamp. And that's not even the best example. A best example has temporarily eluded me. So it's a code to denote membership to a tribe. And it is a timeless tribe, the posh tribe, whereas urban slang is also a code of membership, but it's a constantly changing tapestry of tribes with new arrivals bringing new words and people adopting them. And that is one of my favourites in a very long time as a combination of both question and answer. Tristan is in Stafford. Tristan, question or answer?
Answer.
Carry on.
So it's answer to optimal way to use dry your hands in the hand dryer.
Get in, yes. Come on, from the sublime to the ridiculous.
So this is specifically for the blade ones because they're more efficient than the non-directional ones. So that's your Dyson and I believe your Mitsubishi one. So if you hold your hand out in front of you like a paper for rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
If you then tilt your hand down 45 degrees
to
vertical and then you pull your hand backwards towards you through the air blade, it pushes the water down your fingers off the tip of your fingers.
Oh, yeah.
Which is then why it goes. You often find you've got like a metal plate or a catch below it in the bathrooms.
Yes. And what about on an old school sort of manky pub
on an
one?
old school one, you've got to kind of rub your hands, similar motion, but they're just, unfortunately, it's probably easier just to dry your hands on your jeans.
On your jeans, yeah. Qualifications?
I used to work in the motor design team at Dyson.
Really? And you worked on the hand dryer?
I did some modification for because they use the old vacuum motors.
That's pretty cool.
In the early ones, so worked on those.
Swapped them around. That's pretty cool. What are you doing now, if you don't mind me asking?
I work in defence now.
Really? So you've gone from hand dryers to guns?
I did some scientific lab equipment in between, but yeah.
That's amazing. Have you managed to combine any of the technologies you've worked on? I mean, could you make a hand dryer that could kill people?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm colourblind, so I could wire it up wrong.
Yeah, be careful with that. On the James Bond game I've been playing a lot on the PlayStation, there's you can that's where it came from. It's not quite a hand dryer, but he can turn almost anything into an electrocuting device when the baddies come round the corner and like lean on a fan or something. If James Bond has pressed the right button, the fan can kill him on the spot. So you're not alone, Tristan. Fictional computer game characters are also working across the fields that you work across. That's a wonderful thing. Have a round of applause on me. No, thank you. How hilarious. 12 is coming up to 1:45. I got time. Well, we need answers, really. I got time for another question or two, but we still need to know about the FM versus the DAB. The freckles question. Why do freckles fade? And why do some freckles not fade? How can a toddler outrun an adult at the beginning of the chase, as it were? Hand dryers we've done, slang we've done. And what would happen if you opened a can of Coke in space? Because remember, in space, no one can hear you scream. Oh, and the shooting star, who can see it? How far and wide is it visible? Is the visibility of a shooting star? It's 12:45.
James O'Brien on LBC.
12:48 is the time. The can of Coke, the radio, the shooting star, the freckles, I think, are the questions still in need of answers. It'd be nice to get them all cleared up before home time. It is currently 12:48. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Patrick's in Peckham. Patrick, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Bring it on.
Well, can of Coke in space.
Yeah.
Inside a spaceship, completely different to outside of one.
Correct.
Gravity is the main issue there, not so much the pressure.
This is outside a spaceship, not inside.
So, outside a spaceship, that can of Coke is likely to boil and then immediately freeze.
Really? You can't just say that. Well, I mean, you did. No, you can, obviously, because you did. But why? Why to boil in it? Even in the can, wouldn't it? I mean, I've got so many questions.
As soon as you open it,
right? It would boil and then freeze.
Yeah, because you've got a difference of pressure. So you're going into a vacuum.
Yeah.
Liquids tend to freeze and evaporate eventually in a vacuum.
Do they?
But initially, they start to boil because your boiling temperature of something sort of drops drastically in a vacuum as it does to sort of normal atmospheric pressures that we're used to.
Fair enough. So, I mean, it would go off like a rocket then, wouldn't it?
Not necessarily not like an explosion, but it would certainly come out with force.
Yeah, I mean, it would fly away. It would go, like a rocket. Like a rocket is what I said. It would be literally like a little rocket, a little Coke rocket.
That. Something like that, yeah.
Okay, qualifications?
I'm a scuba diver.
A scuba diver?
Yeah, and I read up about this, must be 15 years ago. It all started with what happens when you crack an egg underwater.
Really? What does happen when you crack an egg underwater?
It retains its shape. If you crack it carefully enough, you'll basically get that liquid egg
floating around in an egg shape, like a little egg.
In its egg shape, yep. In its little bubble, so to say.
Have you done it?
I haven't done it myself, no.
How have you not done it? When you found that out, how have you not done it? I'm going to do it in the bath later.
My instructor did it.
Really? In front of you?
In front of us.
Wow.
Kneeling down on the sand, he demonstrated this to demonstrate sort of atmospheric pressure on the body and how it, sort of keeps everything in position. And
wow. Do you know, that last bit you said there, I was sitting here thinking, it's another science thing I don't understand. And then I did suddenly understand what you were saying. It's not got that much to do with the Coke can, has it, the egg?
No, it isn't.
No.
It's completely the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. But so the boiling point drops to 0 in a vacuum, which means the liquid would go off it would start boiling, and then it would immediately freeze. What would it freeze into? Like candy floss, almost.
I couldn't tell you.
Well, it's mostly sugar, isn't it?
I would think it would just freeze into a so-called ice cube, a Coca-Cola ice cube.
No, it wouldn't though, would it? Because it'd be the bubbles and everything, and it'd be all spreading around. It'd be the opposite of the egg, like you said. It wouldn't be holding together in a can shape. It would be freezing and boiling at the same time. Oh man, I really want to see someone open a can of Coke in space. Do you think we get Elon Musk to get someone to do it?
I'll ask him.
Yeah, nice one. Have a round of applause in the meantime.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, wonderful answer to a wonderful question. What a magnificent mystery hour all round. Yvonne is in Crosby. Yvonne, question or answer?
It's an answer.
Carry on, Yvonne.
So the answer to the freckles question?
Oh, yes.
So basically, modern-day moisturisers have SPF or sun protection factors in now.
Yeah.
And so obviously continuous use of them protects your skin.
Yeah.
And freckles are actually sun damage. And the reason that...
They can't be sun damage because babies have them.
No, they're moles.
No, little young people, like old people but young. They have freckles.
No.
My kids had freckles when they were tiny. We never went anywhere hot. Actually, that's not true. We did. We went to Thailand.
You went outdoors, didn't you?
Yeah, well, yeah, only if they were naughty.
Okay, well...
Go on.
Even in this country, we do get the odd occasional day of sunshine.
So it's melanin, and so you're right. It's been brought up from below by the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And the reason that she's still got them in her hairline is because she's missing that area when she puts her moisturiser on, because she doesn't want to get moisturiser in her hair roots.
So it is literally successful SPF activity from the moisturiser over a period of time, which means the fat freckles that came up during her childhood have gone down again.
Yeah, and she wouldn't have used moisturisers as such.
Of course she wouldn't.
Child.
And it's all got SPF in it these days.
Exactly.
What a great answer. Qualifications?
I've also missing my freckles for the same reason.
Well, I never. Who'd have thought that would be it then? So people who are really, really freckly and don't want to be, if they slathered themselves in SPF 50 all the time, their freckles would go away?
Yeah, not their moles, because the moles are more permanent, but freckles, yes, they would definitely be significantly reduced.
Wow, that's fantastic. Have a round of applause on me, Yvonne.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Lovely stuff. And makes perfect sense with the hairline anomaly as well being brought into the equation. What a lovely answer. Stephen's in Thetford. Stephen, question or answer?
Answer, my friend.
Carry on.
The little kiddies.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they've got a head start, haven't they? Because I haven't even noticed they've gone.
We're going to do bad jokes on Mystery Hour. They're going to be mine. I want a proper answer to the question.
That's a proper answer. I'm a grunt.
No, I know, but they don't. Even if you note the question was contingent upon the fact that you've noticed they've gone because they're running into a road. How can they win the first 10 yards or 20 yards of the race when they are obviously much slower than the adult?
Because I had my hip replaced 12 weeks ago.
It's not. No, this isn't.
Autumn, she calls me Dumps, and she's quick as, like, you wouldn't believe it.
I do believe it, but it's not. Yeah, but this isn't the answer to the question, you silly man.
I'm not
Don't go get knotted. Alex is in Plymouth. Alex, question or answer?
Hello, James. You're right. Long-term listener, long-term big fan. I just hope the line's all right. So, yes, it's an answer for the comets, for the asteroids.
Yes, or the shooting star.
Yeah, so essentially, you're familiar with the Earth, the axis. So we're on angles,
yeah,
right?
I am familiar with the Earth. I might sometimes seem like I'm not, but I promise I am.
The Earth's axis is slightly tilted, right? So,
correct, yeah.
So essentially, the Perseid constellation, the galaxy, is a galaxy, and it was at its highest point above our region at roughly 2:30 last night. The actual constellation. So that is why you can visibly see the comets going across up to 50 to 100 per hour. So say, for example, that the chap was talking, he was in Scotland, and I'm down in the southwest. So it would have been slightly different timings because of the trajectory, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did mention trajectory, so I think you were onto it.
No, it's a good word to use. It's a good word to use when you're talking about space.
I think you were onto it, James, with the trajectory, because essentially,
You're nearly there.
Yeah. Essentially, where the constellation is each constellation. If you look up, like for example, Orion, Pleiades, but Perseids was directly above Britain in a perfect time zone. That's why they were visible.
What about if I'm standing in a specific spot? How far out from that spot would everybody in that area be able to see what I can see? Do we know? What do we think?
It's almost like a bit of a paradox of the question, isn't it? Because you can only be in one place at once, can't you?
Yeah, that's also true.
Unless you were speaking to somebody who was directly standing. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm in several places at once. Where are you? You're in Plymouth.
I know you are.
And people are listening to me in London. People are listening to me in France. I'm in loads of different places at the same time. But
I know, but that's the beauty of you.
Isn't it, Joe? Have a round of applause. This would be so lovely. And for providing a good answer as well. Vanessa is in Cruise Hill. Vanessa, question or answer?
Answer, James.
Carry on.
It's a sort of building on, was it Steve from Thetford?
Yeah.
Saying
but we ignored him. Don't bring him back into the conversation. He was a self-appointed comedian, and we've only got room for one of those.
He was part way there.
Okay.
It's in part, and this is only one of many reasons how children do this. Men and women's eyes are different. Women actually, and the chap that raised this question highlighted 3 different examples where men allowed the children to get, or the children got a head start on men. Yeah. And this is to do with the peripheral vision that women have due to looking after children.
So a woman they wouldn't have got away as quickly from a woman as they did from a man.
Yeah, because men's eyes are for hunting, and therefore their better vision is directly ahead. And this has been demonstrated apparently in road accidents and all sorts of other things, as well as to do with children. And that's just one of many, many different reasons why they get away.
But also little legs.
No, I'm sorry.
No, come off it. It's got to be part of the little legs theory. They just come out quicker because their little legs are pumping away. I think you need to get yourself on a racing track and try it off the guns and actually see whether that theory really holds out. Yeah, but you're completely ignoring the element of this theory, as opposed to the thump thump thump. So a child is less likely to escape from a woman than a man.
Will have less
God, that
of a
sounds a bit... hang on a minute. Let me rephrase that. I mean, a toddler running away from grandma is likely to get less far than a toddler running away from granddad in the middle of a delightful game.
And that's where it's correct. And this has been studied as well.
I love it.
Is that granddad won't even notice the child has disappeared.
Wow. I love this. And you're right to say there'll be other elements going on as well, but that's my favourite. And it gets you a round of applause. What a cracking old mystery how that was. I'm going to give the board game to Zenga. I mean, in a way, we should give one to Laurie as well for the answer. And to be fair, I think she should have had one as well. But anyway, it's just Zenga. We're just giving one to Zenga. We've only got one. I'm not made of money. That's it from me for today. If you missed any of it, you know what to do. Global Player, LBC app, yada, yada, yada. You can listen to a range of podcasts, including James O'Brien Daily, the best bits from my LBC show every day. Tom Sawbrick with you at 4, and Sheila Fogarty with you now.
Was Zenga the slang or the language in social groups? Really interesting.
Wasn't that a great
Very interesting. In fact,
it was a zinger from Zenga.
It was a zinger from Zenga. I was sitting outside listening, and when you said, "Oh, it's the best one in ages," I'd literally said out loud, "Oh, that's good."
Yes. Yeah. Well, good. There you go. If I can get that out of Sheila, that's it. My work here is done.
Your work is done. It literally is for the day. Anyway, thanks, James. Have a nice afternoon.
James O'Brien on LBC.